Good evening. I'd like to call to order Grimsby Council meeting of May 6, 2024. The town of Grimsby is thrilled to announce Matt Sadler will be performing the national anthem this evening. Matt Sadler is 22 years old, born in Grimsby, and was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. Matt has battled through his adversity to become an award-winning musician and possesses a rare talent called perfect pitch. This is the ability to identify musical notes by ear and is a skill that cannot be learned. Matt loves to perform live with his guitar, but his specialty is singing the national anthem. He has performed the anthem hundreds of times and is here to do so for us tonight. Welcome to Council Chambers, Matt. Everyone, please rise for the national anthem.
Test. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons' command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none, can I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Freg, seconded by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Freg, seconded by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the May 6, 2024 council meeting agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Our first delegation this evening is from the Chair and Treasurer of the Grimsby Downtown Business Improvement Area, Mark and Daniel. Mark and Daniel, please come to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. My name is Daniel Vanderstein. I am the owner of the Dutch Shop on Main Street. I am a lifelong Grimsby resident, and I volunteer as the Vice Chair of the Chamber of Commerce and the Treasurer of the Downtown Business Improvement Area. I am here today with our Chair to speak on some of our recent developments. Business Improvement Areas, or BIAs, are a form of local management board unique to Ontario and defined by the Municipal Act. We are an organization funded by a self-imposed levy on our commercial property taxes from the businesses in our area. We used to be just about flowers and street sales, but now we have evolved to include much more. The provincial government's official Introduction to BIA's guidebook, as well as the Ontario BIA Association, or OBIAA, which is a bit of a mouthful, now note that we have 6 mandates: beautification, revitalization and maintenance, marketing and promotion, special events, economic development and business recruitment, and communication. Grimsby has had a BIA since 1977. I was not on it at the time. It was formerly referred to as the Downtown Improvement Area, or DIA. We updated the name recently to bring us in line with other BIAs in the province, so it is now the Grimsby Downtown BIA. To stay relevant and effective, Grimsby must now rise to these expanded responsibilities, transitioning from what is referred to as a BIA 1.0 to a more comprehensive BIA 2.0, embracing these new mandates and becoming more than we have been in the past. Following our last board election, the BIA found itself with a nearly entirely new board and a renewed mandate from our membership to do more. The BIA's budget is not substantial. It's currently about $87,000, or 1/5 of 1% of the town's budget. And most of its existence, it has been operating the same way. There are many excellent examples of BIAs across the province who have taken those resources and expanded them to create thriving, vibrant business communities. And we are tasked by our membership to do the same. In our 16 months on the board, we have made some great strides already, working hard to shore up our housekeeping to become a robust, sustainable, and modern board. We organized and funded the Downtown Planters and Christmas Lights, business as usual. We financially supported the Happening Festival and the Christmas Parade. We supported and promoted the Downtown Farmers Market. We ran the Comedy Night in Grimsby series last August. We ran the hugely successful Ladies' Night promotion last November and have another one coming this Thursday. We rebuilt our social media pages and launched a new website. We rebuilt and expanded our email contact list of membership. We developed the first near-complete database of our BIA membership ever. We created a shared, accessible storage for documents, bylaws, policies, and records. We've worked with our new town liaison, who was generously donated, to help straighten out policy, decorum, and functionality. We developed our first official policies on hiring, procurement, and finance that we have records of. We hired an experienced executive director who brings more than 7 years of EDBIA experience to help lead and operationalize the board's vision, filling a major logistical hole after 5 years. We rebuilt relationships with the Chamber of Commerce and the OBIAA, and we have the best, most open relationship with town staff that the BIA has had in years. And we are pleased to welcome the most oversight this board has seen in a long time. And finally, we worked with the town to revamp our bylaws for the first time in 19 years. As we explored this new way of operating, the BIA identified limitations with the way our financial system was structured. As it stands, the town fully controls the BIA's finances. Any money the board spends must be requisitioned from the town. This was not the original structure 30 years ago when the BIA was founded. Historically, or more than 30 years ago, historically there was a board 30 years ago that needed help managing its finances and agreed with the town to turn control over to the town, and that system has remained ever since. The current system is a time-consuming process for both the board and town staff, with limitations as to what kind of payments are allowed and what the timeline of payments looks like. Many of the services and payment methods that the board would like to use did not exist when the system was designed. There is more information on this in our initial report, which was submitted as part of our March board meeting. Our rollout of this transition was executed quickly. We're excited to get started. We thank the town staff for their patience, attention, and work while guiding us through this process. We only hope that staff and council do not mistake our report or intentions as an insinuation that we are not thankful for the years of support or that we do not believe the town has done an amazing job. Our intent was never to make the town staff or the town or its staff look bad or unhelpful. We value our relationship with the town and are truly grateful for all of the time and attention that town staff has spent working with us. We are honored to be a board of management for this council, and we're very proud that because of the years of support, we now have the capacity to function in accordance with and similar to the vast majority of BIAs in this province. Our team identified challenges that our growing BIA was facing and sought to be proactive, developing solutions inspired by successful practices from other BIAs. Thanks to the capacity building support from the town, we are now well equipped to implement these solutions. Recognizing the value of collaboration, we plan to engage with the town from the outset in future projects, ensuring that our initiatives benefit from their insights and align closely with their vision from the very beginning. We believe that our request aligns with the common practices amongst BIAs in Ontario, where the majority manage their own finances. According to the OBIA's annual salary review of over 300 members, only a very small few reported that the municipality oversees their financial processes. We fully appreciate and understand the concerns regarding potential misuse. However, our updated policies, bylaws, and adherence to the Municipal Act are designed to maintain the highest standards of accountability. Our financial oversight structure includes several robust measures to ensure transparency. An independent bookkeeper appointed by the board, an executive director responsible for organizing accounts and maintaining records, a treasurer who meticulously oversees our finances and provides regular reports to the board, a budget that receives approval from council in accordance with the Municipal Act, Annual audits conducted by the town's auditor to guarantee our compliance and financial integrity, also required by the Municipal Act. Our goal is not to operate unchecked. It is rather to establish a more sustainable and flexible system that enhances our ability to deliver better value to our members without compromising accountability or our mandate. The proposed system aligns us with practices common among other BIAs and positions this board for long-term success. I'm now going to turn over to our chair, Mark Wood, to speak further. Should you have any questions at the end, I am more than happy to answer.
I'd like to thank Daniel for putting together some information about the history of the BIA and exactly what we're hoping to have accomplished in the last little while. For those of you that don't know me, I've actually been involved with the BIA for about 8 years now. I was the chair prior to the previous term and was a member of the board for most of the term prior to the one that I'm sitting on now. I'm pretty familiar with how the board has functioned over the last little while, although I can admit when I first got asked to be the chair of the board, I'd only been in Grimsby for a short period of time and knew very little about Grimsby and even less about how a BIA was supposed to operate. So the reality now is that we're trying to take on some more aggressive challenges. With the bringing on of a new executive director, we've actually gone out of our way to try to find more ways to improve our financial situation and our ability to actually benefit our members more by bringing in grants and looking for other ways we can provide revenue and lower expenses. And there's certain things that we're hoping to be able to take control of to make that just more efficient. As many of you can appreciate, we're discussing a board full of volunteers. They're not employed, they're not being paid. We're talking about a group of people that effectively were asked to meet 1 hour a month and make decisions that oversee all of these particular events. So there's some things going on that, as Daniel mentioned, that in our enthusiasm to try to make some progress in things, there's been some suggestion that our decision to take back control of our finances has been a little bit rushed. Having said that, I want to make a few things very, very clear. First off, the concept of the phrase that we're trying to claim autonomy from the town, I find mildly upsetting. We're not trying to declare autonomy from anybody. We work with the town. In fact, probably more so better than ever before. We have more representation from the town at our meetings. We have more representation from the town in conversations about everything we're doing. We've already engaged the finance department for months on how we're going to go about transitioning this properly to make sure that everything is taken respectfully and responsibly and done in a very transparent manner. As it stands currently, when we submit expenses to the town is responsible for paying those expenses. But at no point in the current process is the town responsible for deciding if those expenses are legitimate. We're already responsible for making our own decisions about where our own money goes. What we're asking, and hopeful that everything will go through, is that it's more efficient for everybody, including the finance department of the town, if after we say that that's how the board, the elected board, decides to spend the funds allocated for that board, that we're allowed to just expedite that expenditure and move on to the next step. Because we don't have an accounting department, we don't have a lot of people involved, and we have one singular paid employee very recently. The concept of switching things back to ourselves became more apparent when we discussed a few things earlier in the year that had to be taken into account. We started to apply for grants. To apply for grants, we needed to have an active CRA business number, which the BIA in Grimsby hasn't had in over 10 years. We had to sort that out. We have to be responsible for our own finances now that we have an employee, which we also did with the approval of town and conversation with town HR and the town finance department. They made it very clear under what circumstances we should be able to pay an employee, under what circumstances we should be able to have them sign a contract, and who would be responsible for that contract going forward. So what we're actually doing is quite the opposite of the concept of claiming autonomy from the town. What we're actually doing is spending more time in conversation with the town to make sure that we are in tune with the finance department and the HR department and people in the town that have their own concerns about what should be happening and how it's going to happen. Our report initially that the board passed to transition the financial control back to us, not only currently is completely under the guidelines of the Municipal Act, but also was made with the concept that we were going to take 6+ months in conversation with the town staff about how we were going to do that to make that transparent and honest and easier on everyone so that we could step up to the table and deliver the transparency and the accountability that they were looking for. We didn't just step up and say, okay, the town owes us $87,000 a year. I'll be here on Monday to pick up a check. Thanks for everything. Like, that's not how this conversation went down. It was very serious. It was taken very seriously, and a lot of people were involved in it. We've already had many conversations. We appreciate the effort by a lot of the town staff in making sure that we were on board about not only our conversation, but our presentations about what we could and couldn't do. The town clerk's office has very recently reviewed a lot of what we said and sent us recommendations that are in line with what we hoped and intended to do in the first place. And we appreciate the town clerk's office time in putting that together for us. We want to make sure that everything that the town is hoping will happen during this transition happens. We're not just looking for a blind excuse to start spending money wildly. But up till this point, the town has had very little control over what we decide to spend our money on, as long as it falls within our budget, which is approved by the town. So I want to stop two things right now. We're not asking for autonomy from the town. We're actually trying to work closer with the town. What we're hoping to do is just streamline some efficiency for a board of volunteers that has less time to function in red tape than a lot of paid committees or other groups of responsible people might have. So at this point, obviously, we're running to a bit of an end. I will allow this for an opportunity for anyone that's not familiar with what we're discussing or hoping to do to ask questions.
Great, thank you very much, Mark and Daniel. Questions from council? Yeah, I think we're doing it now.
You
Yeah.
can ask questions now, but the minutes are under the board recommendations.
Okay, yeah, so this is questions just pertaining to the presentation. The minutes are under the board recommendations.
That was something we discussed. I assume whether or not you guys vote on the minutes is no concern of ours and not to be discussed at
Okay,
this time.
so
I'm making that
while you're
assumption.
here, we'll answer questions. Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. I just had a question about, so your recommendation, well, the recommendations of the clerks were, one, hold an AGM and obtain majority approval on the BIA's financial transition plan, and you did not want to do that. I'm just wanting clarification as to why.
I'll be very clear. There is no precedent of any kind set where a decision made by the elected board that represents the BIA and catchment area put out a referendum to the members to make a decision. It sets a very bad precedent. We were more than happy to discuss it with our members. The members we've discussed it with have been very supportive. But at this point, I think we changed the entire policy and approach to what we're doing by every time we have a vote that more people are interested in, that we suddenly have to open it up to a mass referendum or a new AGM. We have an AGM once a year, which we present things to, which according to the Municipal Act, the members actually don't get a chance to have a vote or say on anything we do anyway. The members vote every 4 years to elect the board. The board makes the decision for the next 4 years, and that's the policies and procedures that have been established by the Municipal Act, the OBIAA, and the history and trends of the BIA in Grimsby. So that's never been done before. I'm not saying that we would never do it. Obviously, with the recommendation of council, if that was something they wanted, it would have to be considered, but there's no precedent for that having happened, nor do I think it's a good idea to set a precedent now where anytime the board makes a decision that seems to be, I'm not even sure why this one is controversial, it seems to be controversial that a whole AGM has to be called and the members are allowed to vote. It actually goes against the standard operating procedures of any BIA or the OBIA throughout Ontario.
Seeing no further questions, again, thank you very much for your delegation. Good evening.
I'd like to thank you all for your time. Thank you very much. Have a good
Our
evening.
next
Thank you very much.
delegation. Our next delegation is from Annette Gibbons on Bill 165 and the decision of the Ontario Energy Board to end gas pipeline subsidies. Annette, please come to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Jordan, councillors, town staff, citizens of Grimsby. My name is Annette Gibbons. I live on Lawrence Avenue. I'm here representing the Grimsby Environmental Network. Tonight, we are asking council to endorse the town of Pelham's motion, support the Ontario Energy Board's decision, and put forward your own motion to support the Ontario Energy Board's decision. The residents of Grimsby are already struggling to make ends meet. Enbridge is raking in billions of dollars of profits, and we as consumers shouldn't be paying or be liable to pay for new gas pipelines, especially when we are currently in a transition phase out from climate-changing fossil fuels. On December 21st, 2023, the Ontario Energy Board decided not to continue a $250 million a year government payment that Enbridge had requested in its rate application for 2024-2028. That Enbridge had, in its ruling, the OEB argued that it did not make sense to continue to build gas pipelines to new homes in light of the energy transition taking place globally. The Ontario Energy Board's decision would require developers to pay upfront for new natural gas connections in 2025, not taxpayers. This would incentivize builders to choose the most cost-effective and energy-efficient option, such as heat pumps and induction stoves, supporting our transition towards a net zero building code. Soon after the OEB decision, the Ford government announced it would overturn the OEB decision. Bill 165 legislation would reverse the December 2023 decision by the Ontario Energy Board and would allow Enbridge to spread the costs of new gas infrastructure across all ratepayers, increasing costs for everyone and increasing GHGs into the environment. Enbridge's claim natural gas is sustainable energy and part of a clean energy future. The facts: fossil fuels are a finite resource and are not renewable. They are therefore not considered sustainable energy sources, whereas solar and wind energy are renewable and have minimal environmental impacts. Natural gas is a fossil gas, methane, mostly extracted through fracking, resulting in large amounts of toxic wastewater. It is more potent than carbon dioxide and is responsible for about 30% of the rise in global temperatures. Enbridge's claim natural gas is more affordable, reliable, and abundant. The facts: all fossil fuel prices are volatile and are currently very expensive. In Ontario, fossil gas prices have doubled and almost tripled in the last 2 years. Research has determined that in Canada, heat pumps are more cost-effective than gas and air conditioning, offering 2 to 5 times greater efficiency than gas furnaces, and they provide both heating and cooling in one unit. This is not a time to increase methane gas pipelines. Ontario's gas plant usage has tripled since the PC government came into power, seeing more usage in 2023 than we have seen in a decade, a significant regression from the province's achievement of almost completely eliminated carbon emissions from the electricity system. More pipelines will leave us with an excess of gas infrastructure that will be underused as the energy transition progresses. A number of environmental communities, environmental organizations, and the Association of Municipalities have all supported the OMB's decision to end a subsidy for methane gas pipelines to be built in new construction developments effective 2025. This would lower energy bills for existing gas customers, improve affordability for new homeowners, and also cut an additional $1.25 billion in pipeline costs. On March 18, 2024, the town of Grimsby did not support the OEB decision and instead endorsed Tweed's motion to continue a massive subsidy for gas pipelines that is paid by every gas customer in the province at an average of $600 per customer. Ending the Enbridge subsidy will not limit access to natural gas, as per Tweed's motion. This is disinformation. What it will do is allow for fair competition and give people more choices of alternative energy sources. It will also shorten the revenue forecast period from 40 years to 0, mitigating stranded asset risk caused by the transition to renewable energy. This council's decision conflicts with Grimsby's endorsement of the Clean Air Alliance gas power phase-out on April 6, 2021. It contradicts the goals of the Niagara Adapts Climate Adaptation Program, where the town of Grimsby partnered with 7 Niagara municipalities and Brock University to develop and implement climate adaptation plans. It also undermines the intent of the town of Grimsby joining the Partners for Climate Protection Program, signed on April 23, 2021, a national network of over 500 plus municipalities, all working to achieve greenhouse gas emission reduction and climate change goals. It breaches Grimsby's call to action pledge to the Niagara Climate Change Action Network to accelerate action on climate change and to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It defies the town of Grimsby decision on September 5, 2024 to declare a climate emergency, joining more than 600 Canadian municipalities who have made a pledge to evaluate the climate impacts of their operations and propose actions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This council unanimously voted for the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee Climate Change Action Emergency Motion. The town of Grimsby states their corporate energy management strategies reduce environmental greenhouse gas emissions and conserve natural resources. Council recently voted to plant 2 mini forests in Grimsby. Mini forests are planted to sequester carbon dioxide that comes from burning fossil fuel, the very fossil fuel that many on council are supporting to increase by voting against the OEB decision. Why then would the majority of Grimsby Council endorse a subsidy for new gas pipelines, fossil fuel that cause approximately 1/3 of Ontario's greenhouse gas emissions, when this conflicts with Grimsby's GHG climate targets and goes against their commitment to the Clean Air Alliance, Niagara Adapts Climate Adaptation Program, the Niagara Climate Change Action Network, FCM Partners for Climate Protection Program, and the very citizens of Grimsby. We need to phase out fossil gas, not add more. We cannot achieve net zero without phasing out the use of fossil gas. Please do not support the increase of methane emissions into our environment while enriching a private monopoly and subsequently burdening the majority of Grimsby residents with the cost of constructing new pipelines. They are already struggling with energy bill increases. In conclusion, we are asking this council to endorse the Town of Pelham's motion to support the Ontario Energy Board's decision and end government subsidies for natural gas pipelines, to acknowledge the importance of transitioning from fossil fuels to low-carbon energy sources that address climate change, and to stand by council's and Town of Grimsby's commitments to reducing GHGs by opposing the proposed Bill 165. We are requesting that you also put forward a motion to support the Ontario Energy Board's decision. Thank you tonight for the opportunity to bring forward this information for your consideration.
Thank you for your presentation, Annette. Questions or comments from council? Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. A question to Ms. Gibbons tonight. I think it's really important that each of us individually do what we can do. And so I have 2 questions for you tonight. I assume you came here tonight via car. Can you tell me how your car is powered?
It's powered by gas.
By gas. And the house that you live in, how is it heated and cooled?
It's heated by gas.
Thank you.
Can I ask, can I follow up with the question?
Yeah, go ahead, you can follow up.
Okay. Well, since Enbridge is a monopoly, we don't have a lot of choices right now. So we are in a transition period. So I don't really, I understand that there's a lot of people that are still relying on gas and fossil fuels. But like I said in my presentation, we are in a transition period and consumers shouldn't have to pay for additional pipelines. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further questions from council, Annette, has also requested to delegate and report TC 24-06, one-year review of the Standing Committee governance structures. Please go ahead with your second presentation, Annette.
I need a breath. Oh, okay. Good evening, Mayor Jordan, councilors, town staff, and citizens of Grimsby once again. My name is Annette Gibbons. I live on Lawrence Avenue and a lifelong resident of Grimsby. As a member of the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, I would like to take this opportunity to speak on the one-year review of the Standing Committee governance structure being presented this evening. The Town of Grimsby standing committees and advisory committees are very important means for residents to help their community through their expertise and participation. Lay members of standing and advisory committees are volunteers who have committed their own time and energy for the betterment of the community they live in and love. They were chosen by council to provide advice to council. However, in some instances, this is not happening due to bureaucratic processes and procedures put in place, much to the frustration of the members, staff, and council. As an example, the public tree bylaw was brought to Grimsby Green Advisory Committee. However, our advice or recommendations are nowhere in the public record. Streamlining the process will enable timelier decisions, which will save staff time and Town of Grimsby money. We need a smooth, efficient, and effective approach. Town-led working groups could be established with a specific task, including a start date and an end date, much like the Town of Lincoln's Innovative Urban Tree Strategy Working Group, where the CAO, Director of Planning, a counselor, senior staff, and community groups are all working together. This is a collaborative effort that builds on a shared goal and purpose for the betterment of the entire town and builds trust and transparency. An invitation could be sent to the Town of Lincoln's working group to meet with the Town of Grimsby to collaborate on a shared service information gathering that could benefit the work needed here on our urban tree strategy. This would save time, resources, and money, as much of the legwork has already been accomplished through Lincoln's working group. This aligns with our council's strategic priorities for protecting our natural environment, to expand and protect Grimsby's tree canopy and protection bylaws. Some of the challenges mentioned in the staff report are not new problems. As I understand the previous council committee of the whole, there were also serious concerns. Therefore, innovative ideas and shared services should be seriously considered as another option. Also mentioned in the staff report is the need for added time between a meeting agenda being published and the meeting, which I fully agree with. For example, this council agenda was published after 4 p.m. on Thursday. However, delegations to speak on agenda items need to be submitted before noon on Friday, given very little time to prepare. I agree there are many opportunities for improvements to governance structure and to support the Town of Grimsby's strategic priorities from 2023 to 2026 on all three priorities: people, places, and prosperity. The current Town Town of Grimsby Council has 2 years left in its term to accomplish the 3 priorities, and the biggest impact that encompasses each priority is an immediate action plan to address the declared climate change emergency. Support and direction are needed from our CAO and council to accomplish this. We need a strategy to protect and enhance the town of Grimsby's most precious natural resources using a best practices approach. The town needs an expert in the field of climate change and sustainability who can drive this. Through their education and knowledge, can determine appropriate actions needed to support each of the town's departments' green initiatives and opportunities available for municipalities. Responsible for requesting, monitoring, and reporting on available green grants and funding, presentations, and determining the best practices, policies, and guidelines to implement, and to encourage and engage in a shared service information approach with other municipalities. We also need a public communications and awareness campaign on climate change and biodiversity through the communications manager by updating the Town of Grimsby's website and hosting roundtable discussions to help further connect community groups with one another, coordinating native species plantings that help our biodiversity loss, invasive species awareness and removal, a celebration for Earth Day, public meetings and open houses that address climate change mitigation and adaptation and green initiatives. Tomorrow evening's Town Talks on Sustainability and Climate Change is a perfect opportunity. I hope residents are able to come out to the Elizabeth Street Pump House located on Elizabeth Street. This event starts at 6 p.m. Our town needs a climate action plan which lays out strategies that mitigate climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We also need to develop sustainability plans to address environmental, economic, and social considerations beyond those directly related to climate change. In my opinion, Grimsby's #1 priority is to establish a task force specifically responsible for a climate change action plan and sustainability. This encompasses all departments within the town, and as I already mentioned, needs to be driven from the top down from a CIO, mayor, council, and senior staff members. In conclusion, it's time to walk the walk. Actually, the town of Grimsby really needs to start running full speed ahead to keep up with the detrimental impacts and effects of climate change and biodiversity loss. We need to honor the finite resources the earth has given us and really become stewards of the land. It is through truth and reconciliation that we recite a land acknowledgement at the beginning of each town meeting. And if no action is being taken, it is merely more empty promises and words spoken, not unlike what has happened in the past. We cannot continue parroting a speech if there is no intention and meaning backing the words. Let's start promoting Grimsby, friendly to nature and by nature. Nature is counting on us right now to change. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you for your presentation, Annette. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through Chair. I just want to say thank you for getting up and delegating on 2 different topics. I know it takes a lot and appreciate hearing your opinion, so thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is from Mark Freeman on Bill 165, the decision of the Ontario Energy Board to end gas pipeline subsidies. Mark, please come to the podium. Good evening.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thanks for having me here this evening. My name is Mark Freeman. I live in Thorold, Ontario. I'm a member of 50 by 30 Niagara, as well as Biodiversity and Climate Action Niagara. And I, again, thank you for your time this evening to talk about the Ontario Energy Board's decision from last December and some of what we believe is misinformation that is being spread by Enbridge. Who am I looking for slides? Oh, thanks. Back in December, the OEB decision to eliminate subsidies for new gas expansion projects was huge. I really saw it as a decision that would finally signal a major effort for Ontario to mitigate climate change escalation that is ongoing. But this decision was more than just about climate change. So the basics of the debate between the Ontario Energy Board and Enbridge really stems from Enbridge's existing business model. So right now, they fund their network expansions and their business growth by raising rates of existing customers. And they spread that cost over 40 years. That'd be a great thing for anyone who has a small business or has worked in a large business. Hardly anybody gets these types of advantages, right? The Ontario Energy Board knows that there is a green energy transition underway, and they also have concluded that the cheapest way right now to heat buildings is with heat pumps, not fossil gas, so-called natural gas. The Ontario Energy Board decision levels the playing field. It opens the door to zero-emission buildings that can utilize a variety of proven fossil fuel solutions, including heat pumps or district energy. Bill 165 simply reverses the OEB decision, and it maintains the status quo, which, for the life of me, I can't figure out why they would do this. The only thing that it does is protects Enbridge profits and shareholder wealth. That's all it does, at the expense of Ontarians. So I suspect that there's some hesitation around heat pumps because of our unfamiliarity with them. But I can tell you that in Norway, which is a lot colder than it is here, most of Canada, that is, 60% of homes in Norway use heat pumps. So it works in the cold. The European Union have about doubled their deployment of heat pumps in the last year. They plan on installing 60 million heat pumps over the next 5 years. This is the future. It's happening now. Prince Edward Island, back here in Canada, they are giving away free heat pumps to qualified homeowners because they know we need to get off of fossil gas. So just a few examples. So there seems to be a significant amount of confusion and what I see as misinformation being spread by Enbridge that I'd like to talk about. I only have time for a few examples. There's literally about a dozen things that I've noted on the correspondence that Enbridge has sent out to municipalities across Ontario. This is just a couple of pages with about four claims. So, for example, Enbridge claims that the OEB decision increases the cost of gas connections. That's not true. The fact is, the OEB decision doesn't change the cost of gas connection. It changes who pays for it and how long it's amortized for. Of course, if developers and home buyers had the choice to purchase a home with a fossil-free heating solution, there is no cost of gas connection. Enbridge also questions the ability of Ontario's electricity grid to handle the additional demand that will come from heat pumps. And this is really a fear factor that they're trying to introduce here. So they want us to fear change. They want us to fear the unknown. Personally, I'm more afraid of what we do know, which is if we don't stop burning fossil fuels, where are we going to be in 10 years, 25 years from now? It's not going to be pretty. In terms of what the province is doing, they are procuring more renewable energy and energy storage capabilities, and they've signed a contract with Quebec Hydropower to help manage peak demand. Honestly, that's not going to be enough. Ontario needs to take a lot of action to support Canada's pledge at COP28 last year, that is to triple renewable energy by 2035. There are solutions for all these things. We can allow offshore wind generation in the Great Lakes, and that'll provide pretty much all the power Ontario needs for years to come. The province can incentivize distributed energy resources, meaning solar and wind farms as an example, that can be owned privately, by municipalities, even by residents. The province can further incentivize the use of district energy, ground source heat pumps solutions that use about half the electricity of air source heat pumps. So there's tons of solutions out there. The fact is we all need to be telling the province to step up to the challenge because there are solutions there. Enbridge also claims that Bill 165 provides consumer choice. It It's the exact opposite of that. Once fossil gas lines are built out and gas furnaces and water heaters are installed, customer choice is gone. Bill 165 effectively removes choice, locks in higher prices and ongoing greenhouse gas emissions for decades to come. I just purchased a new home just a few years ago in Thorold, and I had no choice. There is no choice. What the OEB decision is doing or trying to do is give people the choice. Enbridge claims that Bill 165 supports affordable energy. Right now, developers, they don't pay for the gas infrastructure that they're putting in. That's subsidized. They don't pay for ongoing heating bills that homeowners have. So they have no incentive to do anything other than the status quo, which is to install gas pipelines. The OEB decision encourages developers to utilize the most cost-effective solution for home buyers. And this is our path to affordability in Ontario, is this choice. There's multiple reports that confirm now that heating homes with heat pumps is more affordable than fossil gas. I gave one example on there, the Canadian Climate Institute's report called Heat Pumps Pay Off, if you want to look it up. The key takeaways from this presentation really is that the OEB is driving the required change that we need in Ontario, while Enbridge fights for the status quo, which is to maximize their profits. That's what they're doing. The existing Enbridge business model, as well as Bill 165, will continue to increase the cost of living in Ontario by raising the rates of existing customers. It will result in stranded assets. It's going to be a death spiral of constantly increasing gas rates as more and more people leave the natural gas network and go to heat pumps and other sources of heating their homes. The remaining customers are going to have to pay for that base. And if we're going to continue to expand with more pipelines, the base goes up. Customers go down. It's going to be a death spiral. Bill 165 also forces new home buyers into unnecessary and expensive retrofit costs to move to fossil fuel solutions. So again, my example, I bought a home. It has a water heater and a furnace, both powered by gas. I'm meeting with somebody tomorrow to replace my water heater. That's my first step. But I have to do it myself. So this is a cost that's being forced on me when the government should be helping, not hurting me. If we're still burning gas to heat homes 40 years from now, I'm glad I'm not going to be here to live through this climate carnage that's going to be coming over the coming decades. So basically, we cannot continue with the status quo. We have to take action to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. The OEB decision that came out late last year was based on a year-long process of due diligence, talking to the experts. That's how they came to these conclusions. The OEB decision recognizes that the world is changing. Just as wood, we don't burn wood in our homes anymore to heat, and that was replaced by coal. Coal was replaced by heating oil, and heating oil was replaced by gas. Going forward, we're not going to be burning anything to heat our homes. It's happening now around the world. So the OEB decision encourages us all to adapt to the affordability crisis, the global green energy transition that's underway, and the impacts of climate change. And as I said at the very beginning, this isn't just about climate change. The European Union and the United States know that the green energy transition is not just about climate change, but it's going to create jobs and stimulate the economy. What Bill 165 does is sets us back. It holds us back. So I want to thank you for your time and ask, similar to Annette, that you reconsider your support for Enbridge and get behind the Ontario Energy Board and cheaper costs for Ontarians and reduce our greenhouse gas. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mark. Questions from Council? Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan, it would only be fair if I asked our presenter the same question I asked the other presenter. So your car is powered with?
Electric car I've had for 6 years. Saved about $14,000.
And your home, I think you alluded to the answer, but it is heated how?
With gas, because I did not have the choice. If the OEB decision would have come out before I would have bought a fossil-free home.
The federal government just had in place for a number of years a program encouraging homeowners to switch to heat pumps. I'm assuming from your comments you did not take advantage of that program.
Oh, I did take advantage of the program, and I installed solar on my roof. So I am, as I mentioned earlier, one of the people who are distributing electricity to the grid in Ontario, only I don't get paid for it. So people need to get paid for this. Half of the electricity that I generate on my roof, I give away to my neighbors for free.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, again, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegations this evening? Moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the delegations from Mark Wood, Daniel Vandersteen, Annette Gibbons, and Mark Freeman be received. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we move to Chair's reports. Councillor DeFlavio is first for the April Public Works meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. So the Public Works meeting of April 22nd, there were 3 major reports, one regarding annual drinking water systems. There was a summary report. That's an annual report that's given to council and to members of the committee, just updating us on how our drinking water system is functioning, how the testing is going, and all the things that the town does to keep that in place. Next, there was a presentation regarding the in-road flexible signage pilot program and the 12 locations that have been chosen for this year. There was also a report regarding the drinking water quality management system infrastructure review. And under new business, which is what I'm going to focus on, there was a question about the transportation master plan. Mr. Wortman informed the committee and council that the transportation master plan study has now kicked off. Consultation, which is, our consultant, SEMA Plus, has been engaged to help lead the study. Some initial steps that council should be aware of is that there's going to be a Let's Talk Grimsby page coming soon to a website near you that will be rolled out to give people information about the project. It'll include public engagement tools and which allow the town to solicit feedback from the public. So I would encourage members of council to share that and members of the public to get involved in that process. There are also some informal council workshops coming up in May and June, and the first public information center towards the end of June will be happening. So lots coming forward on that project, on the transportation master plan. And there is a planned stakeholder engagement session in September as well. So I would encourage people to visit the Let's Talk Grimsby page when it gets released. And that'll be on the town social media, of course, as most of these things are. It'll be shared via social media, and stay tuned for further updates. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor DeFlavio. Seeing no questions, up next we have Councillor Korsanji as the Vice Chair of the April Community Service meeting.
Thank you, through Chair. So we had a delegation from the Grimsby Pickleball Association, which discussed pickleball court use at Mayfair Park. Our consent reports covered the Happening in Grimsby 2024 road closure approved by the Community Services Committee, the endorsement of event-related road closures on Main Street West from June 13th to the 15th, 2024. We had discussion reports. There was the approval of the Town of Grimsby Public Tree Bylaw, approval of an amendment to Bylaw 2324, Schedule M, Recreation Facility Rentals for Grimsby Pickleball Association court use in 2024. We received an information update from the Community Services Department for April 2024. Highlights include the installation of outdoor cameras at Southwood Park, completion of the Tearaway Map project, progress on the Casablanca Waterfront Park, operational changes at Peach King Centre, improvements at Centennial Park, and the installation of stone dust pathways in neighborhood parks. We had updates on spring and summer program registrations and upcoming events like Community Safety Day, Waygoose Book Arts Fair, and the Grimsby Glam Gala. We had correspondence. We had the receipt of correspondence from Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority regarding the new Conservation Authorities Act legislative and regulatory requirements. And in other business, we had the approval to explore the installation of motion sensor lights in parks experiencing a high degree of unwanted behaviors and crime, particularly Olive Street, Princess Park. And a report on this matter is to be provided to council.
Thank you, Councillor Korstanji. Up next, we have Councillor Devoli for the April Finance Committee meeting. Councillor Devoli.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. The Finance Committee met on April 25th, 2024. And at that time, after going through the usual approval of past minutes and so on, I'm going to say that the next significant item on the agenda was a presentation from Hempson, a firm that has been hired to work with the town on coming up with a community benefit charges strategy. And subsequently from that will come a bylaw on that. So we had an initial presentation from them, really just a work in progress at this point in time. And there will be more to report, including more consultation with the public and council before this report is finalized. Following that presentation, on the agenda was the approval, and we had asked for a report from our finance staff on the wastewater levy and budget update, which was prepared. The actual ramifications of that I will discuss in the next part that has to do with our year-end results and our reserve transfers. That was item number 8 on our agenda, and at that time, our finance staff shared with us that they are expecting the 2023 financial results to contain a surplus, and within that, they had recommendations as to what we should do with that surplus. $2.2 million arose from the operational levy. $1,080,778 deficit came about from the wastewater, and that was because of an additional billing that does happen whenever there is what I will call the true-up calculation with the region. And unfortunately, after 3 years of a surplus being billed to us from the region, we also now get a $1.7 million bill from them. We have a surplus of $268,000 approximately in water. The downtown improvement area had a surplus of some $31,000 for 2023. So based upon the surplus results, one of the things that Finance had reported to us in prior months was the issue of how to fund the Grimsby Community Development Grant Program. And we had agreed at that time that if there was a surplus for the year, that we would then entertain allocating another $100,000 for the coming year, 2024-2025. It will, the program always, well, initially hung over to 2 fiscal periods, and it will again. And so because we now have a surplus, the recommendation includes that as well. Following that, of course, we approved the setting of the 2024 tax levy and tax rates. And this is always done in conjunction with, once we know the region's rates, the school board rates, and so on. So you will see the resolution in the minutes does go on for quite a bit because it covers all those various areas. As to what needs to be approved. In accordance with an item that was discussed a few months ago, staff are now providing the Finance Committee on a regular basis with an update on the Peach King Center expansion, on what the budget is, what the costs are to date, and if there are any changes. And so we are truly at the beginning stages of this, but I will say that we are in line with budget and there have been no unexpected surprises to date. At the end of the meeting, we regretfully accepted the resignation of Councillor Sharwa, but at the same time, I would like to also say that we unfortunately did lose Councillor Bradzi, but Councillor Howe has now joined our committee, so we've had a bit of change on the committee, but are happy to welcome Councillor Howe and regretfully no longer have Councillor Bradzi with us. The Finance Committee had requested some information on transit ridership statistics, and that same request was made at council. And then the subsequent report on that came to council, so it is noted only in our minutes that The information on that was just to give a heads up to the Finance Committee members that that information, as requested, had already been shared with Council. So we did not go through that again. And then just as a heads up, one of the things that the committee is looking at is again reviewing the investment policy for the town of Grimsby. And we will be meeting with the investment advisor sometime in the next month or two, and we can set that up to have discussions with the firm at that time. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor DeVoley. Up next is myself for the May 1st Planning and Development Committee meeting. We actually had a late delegation, which we, on the committee allowed. It was the owner of 129 South Service Road who was asking or giving some clarification for a signed bylaw variance. The signed bylaw variance was approved. It's a slightly larger sign advertising for businesses to move to this new facility on the service road. Up next, we had receipts of minutes, planning and development from March, a meeting that was chaired by Councillor Bradsey. Thank you in my absence. And we had the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee. So that was basically everything we had that evening. So I'll end it there, and if we need a mover and seconder to receive the minutes. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the following minutes be approved. Council, April 15th, 2024. Public Works Committee, April 22nd, 2024. Community Services Committee, April 23rd, 2024. Finance Committee, April 25th, 2024. And Planning and Development Committee, May 1st, 2024. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we move to the council endorsement package. Can I have a mover and seconder for the Heritage Advisory Committee's council endorsement package? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio. Seconder, Councillor Corstangi. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Corstangi. Resolved that the council endorsement package for the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee dated April 9th, 2024 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, Resolution COR 24-11 from the April 2nd Corporate Services Committee was deferred at the last council meeting. Can I get a mover and seconder to put it back on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Frake, seconder, Councillor Bradsey. Discussion? It's for the BIA. Yeah. Do you want me to read all the requirements? No. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this is related to the delegation we had earlier, and it's asking for, I guess I can't use the word autonomous because that's not a good word, but I have some concerns that we allow the DIA to become their own governance structure, especially as it comes to finance, and I think that Councillor DeVoley is going to speak more to that. But I have some concerns about other things related to governance. I do believe that, first of all, any major changes in policy or governance structure with any group, whether it be the DIA, the Boy Scouts, or the Lions Club, or whatever they want to change the governance structure, they need to have an AGM. I believe that's standard practice. And Councillor Chouard alluded to this earlier. So I do believe that whatever happens, it needs to first go to an AGM meeting of the DIA so that all the members at large also have an opportunity to speak to it or vote on it. And we're talking, I think, something in excess of 140 to maybe 170 members that are on the DIA. Is that correct? Somewhere around there? So I believe that before we get into any of this, I think that the DIA needs to call an AGM or wait till the next AGM to table all of these issues they want, and all these concerns they have, and any governance structures they want to change, and that includes obviously the finance structure as well, and the process. So that's where I stand on this. I mean, I just feel that the membership who pay the monies into the budget through the town, which the town collects on the tax levy, need to have their own say on this. And I think the only way to do this is to call a AGM for all the members at large. So I'll leave that for now. I might come back for a second. I have a few other things I want to talk to. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it at that for now.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess for me, you know, the devil's in the details. And, you know, while I can understand why they might think some processes are cumbersome or take longer than they should, we're a municipal entity, so we have to follow certain rules. So, and we have fiduciary responsibility for this money, even though it's just a very small percentage of the money in our budget. So I'm inclined to think that we need to be very careful about how we proceed, because if we ultimately have responsibility for the money, then we absolutely have to have some, be able to give some input and direction, because we are obligated on our end to act in a certain way. So that's my only comment.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. First, I've got a question. Regardless of the governance structure of the BIA, does their budget still come through Town Council for approval? If we were to make this change, would the budget still come through Town Council? So I see nods of approval. Then I think that's the same oversight that we have now. I don't see how it would be any different if they manage their own money. They are independently elected by businesses in the BIA. The board is elected. If the businesses don't like the decisions that board makes, then at the next election, they will change the members of that board. They were a legally elected board that has the right to make decisions on behalf of the members of the BIA. So I really have a problem with us interfering with them. I think that they have the right to, the money that they collect are from the businesses in the BIA. They are making decisions on behalf of those businesses with the money that they've collected that we've collected on their behalf from the BIA. So I don't think that this impacts the town of Grimsby either way. I think we're still going to look at their budget. We're still going to make sure that they are keeping within the guidelines of that budget when they come forward every year. And they have a responsibility to their members to stay within that budget. So I just don't, I have no problem with them managing their own money. It's their money. That's all.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. So I'm kind of in the middle on this. I acknowledge the fact that we have such a passionate, experienced group of people that are donating their time to do this for the benefit of the town. And I, for the same reason as Councillor DeFlavio mentioned, the amount that we're passing through the budget doesn't change. So maybe we're streamlining the process. Maybe it's a trial period. So I don't know if this is something that we could try for the year and then have a report and see how it worked and then make those changes if necessary. That's one option. But I don't have an issue with that. As far as the AGM, I do think that for the first year at least, they should require some kind of buy-in from the all of the members, because at this point, yes, they elected the people that are on the board. However, it's with the understanding that it's kind of the same process, and they may not have realized that it was going to change in this way. So I would like them to still have to put that out to the members. You know, if they choose to come and voice their opinion, then that's up to them. But I think the democratic thing to do is to have that discussion, allow them to have a voice, and if they don't agree with it, then nothing changes. So again, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'd like to provide that, you know, that new recommendation. However, I do think that the AGM is important.
Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I would like to address each of their 5 issues that they have within their report and talk briefly about each one if I could. So I trust you'll be patient with me. The first one that they mentioned has to do with the lack of financial autonomy, limiting their ability to manage their finances proactively. And I am totally baffled by what they think that means. If they believe that they should set budgets, multi-year budgets going forward, that is something that really doesn't matter who's doing the accounting behind the scenes. If that has to do with their ability to manage their reserves going forward, then I too am confused, because in my time on the board, I have seen them time and time again go back and use the reserves for things that they have not budgeted. So I will say that I am confused and do not really understand and have any specific examples from them as to how that is impacting their ability to manage their finances proactively. On the second point, they claim we have an inflexible payment process or payment process plan of some kind. We use checks to pay, and we use electronic funds transfer, EFTs, which is pretty much the only options out there, unless someone's planning to pay cash, which of course we strongly would, yeah, and I hear you, Bitcoin, but we're not going there. So those 2 methodologies are the ones that the town uses. There's a reason that those methods are used and not Bitcoin. And those are the same methods that will be open to them as well. My concern was, you know, is our process taking too long? So I, you know, had some discussion with our town treasury staff as to the process, and at most, once the check requisition arrives at Town Hall with the appropriate documentation, like the vendor invoice and so on, that turnaround time can be a week to a week and a half. I asked if there have been any complaints by vendors that they're not being paid on a timely basis, and the answer was an unequivocal no, in caps. No, there have been no complaints from vendors that this process is not working. Nor have I heard any complaints from the actual board members themselves about specific vendors during meetings. Their third issue has to do with constraints on expense management, that the expense must be billed before paid. And I will just stop there. Of course it must be billed before it's paid. We don't operate in a world where we pay things before we have the invoice from the vendor and we know we've received the service or the product. To do so would be utter financial mayhem and a lack of internal controls. So, of course, we will always require, even should they operate autonomously financially, that they must adhere to the most basic internal controls, as are currently the controls, that items must always be billed to the entity before they are paid. Their fourth concern has to do with their investments. Currently, they are part of, they're considered a local board, they are governed by the Municipal Act. There are various criteria as to what the town can invest in, which also would be the same criteria would apply to them as a local board. And at the end of the day, of course, when they go by themselves, should they go by themselves, they will not enjoy the ability to, you know, work with an investment advisor as we do to enjoy the same level of investments and rates that we currently enjoy as a larger entity. They will be governed by it. And quite honestly, at the end of the day, they will probably be investing in GICs. That is a question, though, that certainly we could work with them on should we decide that they should stay internal as to how we can manage around that. The last point that they raised has to do with their HR management, and I'm going to refer to a couple quotes that they made which in their report, which really, really bother me. And the first quote says, there is an inability of the town to provide specialized financial HR services. I don't know what financial HR services, perhaps they're talking about the inability of the town to process their payroll, which the town has processed their payroll in the past, but has done it more on a check basis than through the payroll system in order to keep the employees separate from those two. May I continue just for 30 seconds more? Okay.
Unfortunately, we don't operate that way, so you can come back, Councillor DeVoe.
Thank you, that would be fine.
Does anyone want to speak a first time? So, Councillor Howe. You have a point of order, Councillor DeFlavio?
I don't know if I'm using this incorrectly, but the speakers were here and made a presentation. If people are rebutting their presentation and what they have to say, shouldn't that have been to the speaker, or so that they'd have an opportunity to respond to that? I don't understand how somebody could be allowed to speak about a presentation an hour after that presenter has left the building. It just doesn't seem fair to the person who made the speech earlier in the evening.
They knew this was coming up, so they chose to leave. We can't make them stay, so. Who wanted to speak? Councillor Howe, sorry.
Thank you. Earlier in the presentation, and there was a comment made about the DIA at that time, looking to the town for some guidance over 30 years ago. Well, 30 years ago, that's when I had a certain hardware store downtown. And there was a period that, not struggling, but, you know, a bunch of small businesses. And when I say small businesses, most of this downtown merchants, so to speak, they got one or two people, and, you know, you don't have a big staff. But the town gave us some stability. It just felt like you had somebody that had your back. You had information as to how to deal with some of the issues that were going on. It was a much better time after that than it was before that. So my experiences from then were very positive. And I think it's kind of continued on. As I've said before, much like this, there's times when the municipality has to step in for whatever reasons, and let's use the Santa Claus Parade. I've used that analogy before. They had to take it over. It's the continuity that comes from the municipality. The businesses change, the people change. The municipality is there all the time, so.
All right, go ahead, Councillor DeVoe.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So just to go back to the issue of specialized financial HR services, I can only assume they're referring to the ability to process payroll. And of course, our finance department is still able to do that, but it must be done under, and the payroll remittances must go out under the Downtown Business Improvement Association's CRA business number, and I will come back to that issue. The second comment that really, really bothered me was that they feel they have operational inefficiencies and potential legal complications arising from the town's current role in the HR function. I am absolutely baffled by that. The role of HR and of our town staff, and I saw it firsthand almost day by day as we worked through some of these issues with them, has always been to keep them out of what I call a really large mud puddle and to make sure that they don't slide into it. And so all the work that was done to keep them safe, to keep them on track, to make sure that they abided by all of our various laws, Employment Standards Act, payroll remittances, and so on and so forth. And so I find that comment very disturbing. I would like to address the CRA payroll business number issue, as one of the presenters did bring it up. And he said that the CRA business number had not been used in 10 years. I would like to correct that and say that in 2019, the downtown business improvement area no longer had an employee. What happens with the CRA at that time is that when you don't have an employee, you have no payroll remittances to make. And eventually, if you don't want to keep sending in the form every month saying you have none, you can check a box on the back that says you basically are dormant. And when it is time, then the number is revised or revived, pardon me. And that was what happened, and it arose because there was no employee in those intervening time, and so the town handled the matter absolutely appropriately, and it only goes back to 2019. The Treasury staff have worked very hard to try and revive that dormant number because the association now has an employee, and they continue to work on it. At the end of the day, I will say this. They are small business, owner-managed operations, and it is really hard being a small business owner. You have to wear a lot of hats. You're the sales department, you're the finance department, you're HR, you're production, you are legal sometimes, and you wear every hat going. And I have a lot of admiration for all my clients over the years who really tried to learn and work in all those roles. It is very hard, but at the end of the day, they are still struggling to figure this out and how it applies to a local municipal board.
Thank you, Councillor DeVoley. Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I don't know how much I can add to that. Anyways, I do have, having noted the issue of the AGM and the members at large being involved in changing this process, which I still say is the most important piece of this. Other than that, once a budget is put together, it comes to Town Hall, we put in place the tax collection to fund that budget. So if the DIA becomes responsible, own themselves 100% for that budget, and we have no oversight, what happens if something goes wrong, whether it be a legal issue? Because I know, and I would be very careful here, because I know in the last term of the DIA, which I was a council member, there were some major legal HR issues. And I know they're ongoing, and I know there's a lot of money attached to it. So what happens if they get themselves into some kind of trouble and it goes way beyond the budget we've approved? Then we become automatically responsible and liable for anything, because they are a creature of the municipality. I mean, like the municipality is a creature of the province. So I don't think we can just shovel this off and be remiss on this. I think it's very, very important that we contain the oversight from the financial perspective. And there's, Councilor DeVoley mentioned liability insurance and those types of things, where a whole host of various things which they become responsible for. There's cost attached to that, and there's risk attached to that. So we have to consider all of those things when we're making our decision. I just cannot, for the life of me, accept that we allow them to go off and do their own financial processes and put all their checks and balances in place without us having some monthly oversight on it all the way through. So, I mean, I know there's 444 municipalities in Ontario. Most of them have DIAs, and I don't imagine that too many of them have gone down this road that I'm aware of, and I'm not totally versed in it. But I think that we need to be responsible enough to keep this within our fold, and I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, so we have this resolution on the floor, moved by Councillor Frake, seconded by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that Council direct the BIA to undertake the following requirements in order as listed below. Number one, hold an AGM and obtain majority approval on the BIA's financial transition plan. 2, develop and improve financial management policies and procedures. 3, hire a qualified bookkeeper. 4, procure payroll and financial management software. 5, establish financial accounts. 6, set up a new bank account and obtain checks and deposit books. 7, establish financial transition of financial controls approved by BIA and council. And that's any legal expenses and settlement costs related to the BIA will be the responsibility of the BIA. Liaise with the town to transfer the BIA's financial information. Provide the municipality appointed auditor of all its records such as books, documents, transactions, minutes, and accounts by the date established on the procedural bylaw. Number 9, obtain additional independent insurance or pay respective amount to town. A, for all insured related claims, the BIA will be required to pay the town the applicable deductible to hold in trust until it is required to pay. B, if the losses from the BIA claims affect the town's reserves and loss ratio that result in an increase to the town's premium, the BIA will be responsible to pay the proportionate increase for the first year the increase is experienced. Number 10, submit bylaw revisions. All in favor? All right. Councillor DeVoley.
So can,
Councillor DeVoley was on the floor before you.
I hear the concerns from my fellow councillors, and I do echo the same, that, currently we have financial staff who oversee the accounting for this entity, and that this resolution ultimately leads to that. So I would like to amend the suggestions and
for amendment, so it isn't the third time speaking.
And so I would like to ask that we also require that their monthly financial statements be shared with the town's treasury staff and finance departments as part of that process.
Staff can certainly add that in as an amendment. Councillor Frake.
so I just want to me, the most important item on that list was the first one. Can you read the first one back to me again? Make sure I got it right.
Yeah, number 1 was hold an AGM and obtain majority approval on the BIA's financial transition plan.
So I'm assuming that we should put a criterion that should be first before anything else happens?
Yeah, the list was created in order.
Okay, so that has to happen first? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Just clarifying that this is the staff's recommendations.
Yes, this is staff recommendation, and they're in order of how the BIA has to follow through with it. Yeah, I think the amendment was friendly. I don't know if council feels that way, but I think it is. So I've read the resolution. All right, I've read the resolution, so we'll vote e-scribe. All right, that's carried. Up next, can I have a mover and seconder to receive the remaining board minutes? And just to update people, that's the Heritage Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, seconded by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, seconded by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee minutes of April 9th, 2024, and Committee of Adjustment minutes of April 16th, 2024 be received. All in favor? That's carried. Before we do the regional councillor update, are there any announcements this evening? Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I just wanted to congratulate staff for the Ways Goose event we had at the Art Gallery this past weekend. We saw a lot of visitors from all across the province, as well as, you'll have a little bit more, Mr. Mayor, on this to come, but just to announce that May is Museum Month, and just to give a shout out to the Grimsby Museum and Nels Manor in town.
Just want to announce that this week is Clerks Week through Ontario, and I just want to thank all our clerks who do an amazing job. Thank you very much. Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan, since we last met, pardon me, the federal government did announce their budget on April 16th, and I wanted to share with my fellow councillors one of the great ironies of life. So we had a resolution come before us a few months before that, very close to probably the time when the federal government was considering what their changes were going to be, and one of the resolutions that was circulated amongst all the municipalities was that the volunteer firefighter tax credit, which also applies to search and rescue volunteers, be increased to a $10,000 credit from $3,000 where it currently sits. I always assume that our resolutions go into a big blue or gray box when they make it to some minister's office, which is why I call this the great irony of life. This particular budget increased the tax credit from $3,000 to $6,000. I don't know if we all played a role in this or if the finance department at the federal government just had an epiphany, but I just wanted to share with my fellow councillors and with our volunteer firefighters that starting in 2024, that increase goes from $3,000 to $6,000. Our finance department is aware of the change because there are certain criteria they have to meet to get the letter from us and so on and so forth. They made some other administrative changes within that have to do with issuing charitable donation receipts, which our finance department is also now aware of, that it applies to them as well. But in all other manners, they did not increase taxes. Unfortunately, they increased our deficit and our debt by a huge amount, and I will leave it at that.
Any further announcements, maybe happier ones? If not, up next we have regional councillor update. Welcome, Michelle.
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. I'm not going to surprise you like she did. I'm sorry about that. Actually, today I'm just going to tell you a story. In October 22, a few candidates were asked to participate in a grade 5 class discussion about politics. 2 other members of that are in this room right now. They may find it an interesting step down memory lane. Marianne Balsera has grade 5 class. They were studying politics. They had just done the federal politics. They had talked about provincial, and it was a perfect time to have the class speak to a couple of the candidates about municipal and regional council. These children were very knowledgeable. They asked great questions and were genuinely interested in our community. At the end of the class, I asked them, "What do you want from your elected officials?" Their answers somewhat surprised me. One young man wanted a fishing pond. He wanted a fishing pond so he and the kids could go fishing in one of the parks. Well, that's not a role of anybody in this room, so I contacted Trevor over at Parks and Recreation, and I told him about this little request, and he's a good sport, so he said he'd take care of it. I think he got the kids planting some trees, so good on Trevor. The next one was they felt that sometimes the town wasn't safe, and they wanted more police officers. In fact, there was one young man who wanted a SWAT team for Grimsby. Now, he had it outlined. He knew it was a 5-man team. He wanted a Big Bertha. He wanted all the bells and whistles, and he thought we'd be much safer with a SWAT team for Grimsby. The third group of children, which was the biggest group of kids, wanted safer roads for Grimsby. They wanted to be able to ride their bikes, they wanted to be able to cross the road, and they wanted drivers to slow down. Regional Road 81, in bits and pieces, are going to be re-urbanized, which means there will be sidewalks, there will be bike lanes, and there will be passing lanes, and it will be much safer for children. It's not all done at once, it's in bits and pieces, and at my next report, which will be an update, I will tell you which one is slated for 2024. Along with that came Vision Zero from the municipalities and the region. At the last council meeting, I gave some statistics about how the automated speed enforcement camera program was working. There's a lot of promising numbers, which included the average speed, which was reduced. However, there was one statistic that I absolutely butchered, and I'm here to correct that for you. The report, PW11-2024 from April 9th states, the implementation of the ASA cameras is an important component of the Niagara Region's Vision Zero initiative, striving to reduce and eventually eliminate traffic, fatalities, and serious injuries on the regional road network. Niagara Region averages 117 fatal or injury collisions per year related to aggressive driving and speeding. The presentation went on to speak about near misses reported by the crossing guards. At that same meeting, at the most recent regional meeting, there was a very lengthy discussion from all of the councillors with regards to the program. We all felt it was working. Statistics are showing that it is working. However, we do recognize there's problems. We're listening to our residents when they're telling us the concerns they have. We are sharing them with staff, and we're quite confident that our public works staff will take these considerations into effect and make the appropriate changes. So the camera that was set up in the Park Road area has now been moved on. The hardware remains. The camera's coming back. So to Councillor DeFlavio's comment last time about why are they not bringing them back, it's coming back. I don't know when, but the hardware remains. The camera has left. The next one is coming to Blessed Trinity during the summer vacation, but the speed does not change at that time. Just be really aware of the fact that 50 is what the speed limit is. So update, not so much, but an apology for the mistake I made last time.
Thank you, Councillor Seaborn. Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you for the update and for the correction. I think even at the time you said you were going to look at the data, because I think Councillor Howe might have questioned it. People make mistakes all the time. I didn't think it was headline news, but thank you for correcting that. As far as the improvements to Main Street to Regional Road 81 are concerned, will there be an opportunity for public engagement about what that's going to look like? Will there be, and if you don't have that answer tonight, if you can get back to us about that so we can share that with people, because those changes, bike lanes, for example, and things like that are things that impact people and would be great to share with the public and get feedback on. So any opportunity that you have to share that with us so we can pass that on, we'd appreciate. Thank you.
I certainly will, because they're all good news. Thank you.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. Again, thank you for making that correction. We knew that there was a mistake, and you clarified that, so that's being human, so I appreciate that. I still not a fan of the cameras. I do still feel it's a tax grab, especially when you're ticketing people in a community zone when people aren't even in school. However, the one thing that I do really appreciate is the fact that you said that that these things are being addressed, and hopefully these corrections will be made, and we'll find a happy medium. So thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I was curious if, if those stats included the QEW.
Are you talking about the fatalities and accidents? It was all of Niagara region, so that must include the highways as well.
It would be interesting to kind of get a breakdown of where we actually have problems, because there's accidents and fatalities and injuries almost every day on the QEW in the region. So I would like to get an idea, if that's possible, to get, you know, what's sort of happened locally here in Grimsby over the last couple years.
You want it specific for Grimsby?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I could probably get that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Without the QEW.
Without the QEW?
Yeah.
Just within the town?
Yeah.
I think our local police can provide us with that information. I'll do what I can for you.
Thank you very much. Oh, one other thing and another thing. When I lived in Ottawa, you were able to access basically crime maps. And I mean, they were public. It wasn't anything, you know, that you had to be in the know or whatever. But you could look at it. You could look at a part of a map, and you'll see where there were break-ins, where there were cars stolen, where there was, you know, an assault, even things more serious. And I think it would be really great to have that for Grimsby, because I think it would help us to kind of pinpoint areas of concern. So that would be something, if you could take back to the regional police to see if we could get that, that would be great. Thank you.
It certainly will be part of the regional police services. And just to remind you that we do have more officers joining us this year. So District 8 will have a nicer complement. And it's not a SWAT team, but I'm sure the kids will be pretty happy about that. And I just want to make one more point. 117 per year is still too much. So even though the number was skewed last time, 117 per year is still too much.
Well, you know what they say, there's lies, dirty lies, and there's statistics. So I really like to kind of get underneath and really see what the data is saying. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, thank you, Councillor Seaborn. Have a good evening. Up next, the first discussion report this evening is a one-year review of the Standing Committee governance structure. Can I have a mover and seconder to get it on the floor for discussion? Councillor Frake and Councillor Baradzi. And Victoria, please go ahead with your report. Yep, perfect. Thank you.
I see your better sides on this side, so. Okay, thank you. So today I'm here to present to you the one-year review of the standing committees. I want to take a moment to thank Katie and Jess, who are with us today, for researching, writing, and contributing to this report over the last 4 months, so just about since when I started with the town. So it has not been a short process, to say the least. I'm not going to go through the report directly through the report line by line. I just want to highlight the recommendations, the current structure that we're under, and the stakeholder summary. Just take a quick look at some of the meeting by the number data, the housekeeping amendments, and then the options. And then I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So our recommendations, there's 6 there. 1, that the report be received. 1, that council choose a model of governance based off the options provided. The 3rd is that the 2024 housekeeping amendments, which we will briefly discuss, be approved. That the procedural bylaw in terms of reference of the committees be revised and be brought back to council. That the appropriate communication be sent to the relevant people regarding the decision that council makes, and that the treasurer report back on the 2025 budget process and timeline. So on page 2, you'll see a governance structure history of what's happened in Grimsby in the past. And Appendix A has some definitions so that we're all on the same page about about some of the terminology used. And Appendix B has some past reports regarding governance. Currently, we do have the 5 Standing committees, corporate services, community services, finance committee, planning and development committee, and public works. And we also have committee of the whole budget. You'll see here we have a number of advisory committees and boards. And for the purposes of this report, we are only considering those in green. That's because some of them are boards, some of them are outside our jurisdiction, and some are legislatively mandated. On page, just for your information, we currently have 11 lay members appointed to standing committees and 46 lay members appointed to advisory committees and boards. On page 4, you'll see that we did some research about other municipal structures within Niagara, as well as 14 other Ontario municipalities, and there does seem to be a trend of council-only models being the most common. On page 4, you'll see some notes about the planning application pressures as a result of the bills, Bill 23, Bill 109, and now potentially Bill 185. And on page 6, you'll see we spoke to the 2025 budget process regarding the motion that came forward and recommending through option 6 that the treasurer report back on that process specifically. So the stakeholders summary. So we did consult with CLT and as well as one-on-one interviews with all council members. And then we circulated a survey to the 38 lay members. We received 6 responses from standing committee members and 15 from the advisory committee members. The analysis is a summary of topics and common themes. It certainly isn't a fulsome review of what was discussed. We had many conversations with all of you as well as with CLT, but we wanted to pull out the common themes here. And you'll see pages 6 through 12 is the feedback, and it's organized through what's working well, what's not working well, and what the ideal state of governance is. So just a couple graphs and charts that you'll find in the report. Meetings held in 2023, Grimsby had 146 total number of meetings. Here you'll see the duration of the council meeting, specifically, green being the first meeting, orange being the second, and that's organized by minutes. This graph is interesting because it compares the committee of the whole structure that was in place for the first 4 months of 2023 in comparison to the standing committee meeting lengths. So you'll see the 5 different committee lengths on the latter half of the graph here. This is the number of live streamed council and committee meetings. So there were 60 meetings live streamed in 2022 in comparison to 104 in 2023. There were 250 working days in 2023, and the town conducted a council or committee meeting in 42% of the working days available last year. The average view on live stream was 6 minutes and 10 seconds long in 2022, increasing a little bit to 10 minutes and 10 seconds in 2023. The average the average lifetime views, so the total cumulative views for a live stream meeting is on average 72. Okay, so the housekeeping amendment. So on page 17 of the report, we've put forward some suggestions to implement regardless of what option is chosen for the structure. This would be to update the calendar and the procedural bylaw that would be beneficial to make regardless of the chosen governance structure. So you'll see that there are a few calendar date shifts. The goal was to remove Tuesday meetings and move them to the Monday after. So we are not holding meetings on the Tuesday after a long weekend. So that would affect the July, August, September meetings, and then July, August, and then September has a little bit of shifting there to ensure that we don't have back-to-back meetings. So we would have a meeting on Monday, September 16th and Monday, September 30th. In addition, we're suggesting to reduce 1 meeting in December to accommodate the holiday by eliminating that December 16th meeting. There are a couple other housekeeping amendments we're recommending. One is that each committee, again, regardless of what governance structure model is chosen, be reduced to one meeting between July and August. That the notice of motion deadline be revised as per previous council direction, so just making that administrative change. To review the delegation request timelines to provide the public additional time. And to review the need for simplified procedures for committees and consider condensing it into council's procedural bylaw so that committees and council are all governed by the same procedural bylaw. So tonight we're presenting three options: a council-only model with existing advisory committees, a standing committee model, which is the status quo, with a few suggested changes to continue to streamline the model, and then a committee of the whole and council model. So just as a reminder, I'm sure you're familiar with this calendar, but this is our current meeting calendar from May until December. And this is the reporting structure. So you'll see that we do have that middle level of governance through the standing committees. The first option is recommending a council-only model with advisory committees. So in addition to calendar and reporting structures, which I'll briefly flip over, they're also all in your appendices. We're recommending that the current standing committee lay members be offered the opportunity to join an advisory committee, that planning public meetings may take place at an existing council meeting, or if there are several, be scheduled for the second Monday of the month, and that the number of council members be reduced or eliminated on advisory committees. So this is what that calendar would look like. It's a little less colorful than the previous one. And this would be the reporting structure. So you'll see all advisory committees report direct to council. The next model is the standing committee model, which would be what we'd consider status quo. Due to some of the challenges that are identified, we would recommend some changes be made, including having only one staff advisor and recording secretary per advisory committee, to amend the terms of reference for standing and advisory committees to have a bit more of a narrow focus, to schedule additional training for chairs and committee members, and to eliminate the corporate services standing committee with all legal, HR, bylaw, ITSI, and clerk reports going direct to council. So Appendix F, this is what that standing committee structure would look like. And this is how our current structure looks right now. So again, you won't see corporate services up there as a standing committee. It's split out a little more there. Okay, so the last one's committee of the whole and council. So in that structure, we're recommending that, again, that the current standing committee lay members be offered an opportunity to join an advisory committee, that council would need to give us a little more guidance in terms of what you're looking for. We could have 2 committee of the whole and council meetings per month, or have 1 committee of the whole and 1 council meeting per month. They could be on same days, different days. So we have broken that down for you in the calendars. If it's something you'd like to look at, I can explain it a little more. But here's an example of 1 month, same night. So committee of the whole would go first, then council. And then twice a month, the same night. So we'd have 2 nights where we do committee of the whole and council. This is if we separated out committee of the whole and council on different nights. So there would be a meeting most Mondays. Sorry, twice a month, yeah, and then different nights. And then this is what that reporting structure would look like. So all advisories would go to the committee of the whole. Committee of the whole would be composed of all council, and those minutes would go to council for final approval. So again, our recommendations, there's 6 there. We are looking for some assistance to choose options 1, 2, or 3, to choose a model of governance, and then also pass the housekeeping amendments. And then from your decision, we will continue to make the administrative changes for the procedural bylaw in terms of reference and bring those back for your final review. happy to answer any questions or any comments.
Thank you for your report, Victoria. Councillor Howe.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And I'm not sure if it's going to be directed towards Victoria, but if I can make a suggestion is, this is a heck of a package for us. A lot for me to try to take in. I don't know about anybody else. But sometimes you need to take not the low-hanging fruit, I don't like that. But the one part of it is the housekeeping that they referred to, the changing the dates, the December meeting, the reduced to one meeting during the summer, revised notice of motion deadline as per council direction. That's on page 17 of the report, and that would just clean that off. And then we need to get into the nitty-gritty. I understand that, but if just cleans it up quite a bit anyways. So if I could, is it appropriate to make a motion or to do that, or?
Yeah, I think you're very welcome to split it out, so I think your direction would be to split it out and vote on number 3 first. Is that correct?
Number 3? But then isn't there a couple, number 3 is just the meeting change of the dates, the Mondays. But like I said, it's the page 17 that I want to just make sure we're covered off on, which is called the 2024 housekeeping amendments. Okay? Got it? Like just.
And then we can put the question
All
on the
right,
floor.
so we can put the question of the resolution of number 3 on the floor. We have a mover in Councillor Howe. We just need a seconder. Councillor DeVoley.
Sorry, which part is this? Like, because I didn't print it.
Do you mind if I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you able to put up this? Sorry. Through the chair, so this would be, this is the calendar changes, so moving the meetings to the Monday following a holiday, canceling the December meeting, and then each committee being reduced to one meeting between July and August, revising the notice of motion deadline as per council direction, reviewing the delegation request timeline to provide the public additional time, and review the need for simplified procedures for committees and condense the procedural bylaw.
All right, so moved by Councillor Howe, seconded by Councillor DeVoley. Well, how's that?
Yep.
It's not up there. Resolve that staff be directed to implement the 2024 housekeeping amendments as noted in the report. All in favor?
Can I just ask a question?
Councillor Sharwell?
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. I'm just wondering if we haven't figured out our governance structure, whether this, like, we're doing it backwards, right? So we can't make adjustments to housekeeping amendments if we don't know what the structure is that we're voting on.
Yes, through the chair, thanks for the question. The goal of the housekeeping amendments were to make sure that they were independent of any choice for governance. So we would look to be moving the council meeting to that second week regardless of the committee structure. If depending what option you would choose, we'd still look to have advisory committees only meet once in the summer. Of course, we would hold off on our procedural bylaw updates until we're ready to implement them. But the hope was that the 2024 housekeeping amendments could stand individually.
Councillor Breads.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Does this only apply to the advisory committees, which remain on all three options? Yeah.
Through the chair, it's just council. So we've changed the council dates in July, August, September, and December. And then the remaining amendments would be reducing the committees in July and August. So regardless of what option you choose, we would schedule the meetings between July and August. Notice of motion deadline is a council procedural bylaw. Delegation request timelines, a council procedural bylaw, which would eventually impact the committees, but not necessarily the governance model you choose. And then the simplified procedures for committee and condensing that into council would be done once we know where we're headed.
All right, I read the resolution. I see no further questions. Why don't we just vote on e-scribe for it? All right, that's carried. Now we move to the remainder of the resolution and open up discussion. Councillor DeFlavio.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm in favor of keeping the status quo when it comes to the standing committee structure. Many of us were elected on the promise of bringing back the standing committee structure. I think that if the next council decides to change back to committee of the whole, then that's their choice. But I don't think we've given it a fair shake. For me, the positives of the standing committee structure are the diverse expertise and perspectives that we get. I can tell you from the committees that I'm on, we have professionals in those fields on both of those committees that are lending additional information. We're getting free feedback on projects and things like that. Lay members have specialized knowledge in areas like urban planning, environmental conservation, business, social services, and their unique insight can enhance the quality of discussions and lead to more informed choices. It's a better way of engaging the community and having community representation. Lay members come from different segments of the community, represent various interests and demographics. I think it's a good way to distribute workload. Standing committees handle specific areas of municipal affairs. With lay members participating, the workload can be distributed more effectively. Elected officials can focus on the broader policy matters, whereas you'd have more specific committees dealing with specific items. Committees can conduct in-depth research, hold public consultations, make recommendations, allowing council to make well-informed decisions efficiently. You get expertise in technical matters on committees, whether it's engineers, zoning regulations, things like that. For me, the most important one in all of my experience in council was the checks and balances that having lay members on committees brings. And what I mean by that is, as politicians, we all have political considerations when it comes to making a decision. I have always appreciated having lay members there to give us a non-political perspective on an issue. I think back on one particular lay member that I was a member of planning with for 15 years, who always gave a really good explanation for what their belief was on a planning issue that wasn't based on what, the complaints that they received or anything like that. It was based on what they thought was the best decision, and I always appreciated that. That balance helps prevent decisions based solely on political expediency. And also, finally, I think it's a learning opportunity for staff, for council, and for lay members. For council, we get an in-depth knowledge. It might not be of every department, but we get an in-depth knowledge and we develop relationships with staff members that you don't get to develop in the committee of the whole system. We don't see day-to-day staff members in a committee of the whole. We'll see department heads. Whereas in a I could talk from the two that I'm on, the Public Works Committee, we see every member of that Public Works staff come forward and give presentations on their specific field and the things that they're knowledgeable on. And every time they do that, I learn something. And that's something that is lost in the Committee of the Whole system, where everything becomes a consent item, because otherwise the meetings would be 12 hours long. I understand why they become consent items, but sometimes things are, we learn from things. And all of my knowledge of municipal affairs has come from what I've learned from staff. So I think maintaining that committee structure is very important. And the last thing I'm going to say is I don't think we've given it a fair shake. We haven't even had 1 year of budgets going through the committee process. Our committees didn't even have a chance to look at the budgets this year because we skipped over the committees and went straight to committee of the whole for the budget. So all of us can still learn from this process. I think for this term of council, should continue with the status quo and then allow the next council to make their decision based on what they hear from constituents. Thanks, Your Worship.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. My preference is for option 1. And whether we have standing committees or advisory committees, it's still the same people on them. So we're not losing that expertise. And I think, you know, our commitment to go to standing committees, what really underpinned that was community input that we weren't getting with committee of the whole. So I think we can achieve that same kind of input and advice and, you know, learning opportunities through advisory committees. I personally have felt that, you know, the Grimsby Green Committee going up through the communities, and then, you know, it was cumbersome and you know, it was very hard to really be able to bring that input forward. And I think that, you know, I felt, I mean, it's great that we tried this. I think it's cumbersome. And I think we, you know, a year into it, we know I personally think there's a better way to do it. And we'd be able to achieve all those things that we set out to do when we got elected in option 1.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So I got to give a lot of respect to Councillor Vardy there for. I kind of also agreed. I think we've got a few things wrong with this. I think we got to recognize that and make some adjustments a year in. For me, I see many pros and cons to all options, but for me, the biggest pain points I'm finding with the current structure are, as Councillor DeVoley noted earlier, I had to resign from finance. Just to clarify that, the reason was because that I joined the Grimsby Economic Development Advisory Committee, which reports up the ladder through finance. Me personally, I would favor option 1 as well. I feel also one of the biggest pain points I have with the committee structure is I find we wouldn't be hard pressed to go into any meeting and find people asking, well, wouldn't it be great if we had some cross-reference or staff members from other departments as well? So I really think the standing committee model we're on now really compartmentalizes staff by department, where we should be seeking collaboration between multiple departments. And I feel option one does that while we're still not losing all of the residents that bring their expertise to the table. So I really see council-only model with advisory committees as a best of both worlds. We get to have that collaboration between staff departments, and we get the advice from the residents that you know, bring unique skill sets on whatever committee that they sit on. I really think that we should make an adjustment, and I would table option 1.
Councillor Howe. Go ahead, Councillor Howe.
Thank you. We have an opportunity. First of all, Councillor, that term political expediency is just kind of gnawing at me a little bit. When I ran, it was always with the expectation I was going to make the best decision for the town of Grimsby and not worrying about getting my tail reelected. But that's political expediency, and I get it, and I guess it does happen. But I think we've got an opportunity here to actually look at ourselves. How can we, even if we stick with the standing committee, and I'm here to tell you that I'm a standing committee person, but we have a chance to look at ourselves a little bit. Can we tweak something? Can we? The reality is productivity. Productivity for staff, productivity for us up here, to make what time is available productive. Is there things that we can do, in the process within ourselves and bringing that forward? And, it's something that we could work in without change in the world, but to work on it. But it gives us a chance to look at it. If we come back 2 weeks from now and after kind of thinking about it and digesting it, and I know I saw this, Friday? There was a whole lot to try to take in. And I know a couple of people over here that worked really, really hard and appreciate it. And a lady over here that worked really hard. But they had about 4 months. We're talking about, trying to, push a decision through on ourselves, that maybe if we're not comfortable with it, let's take that bit of time to be reflective and to think what is best, going forward for the municipality. I would certainly enjoy or appreciate having that little bit of extra time, just to take it apart and come to grips with. And if I've got questions, I can ask the questions of staff so that, the next council meeting, then I can be, well, I was going to say smarter, but I don't know if that'll ever happen with me. Just a little bit wiser. So.
Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I'll say up front, if whatever structure we come to, there has to be lay members within those committees. I mean, I think that this is the first term, I think, in a long time that we've had so many lay members involved in so many committees. And I think it's been invaluable to us in so many ways. So whatever structure we come up with, we definitely need lay members in there, maybe more. However, I come from the corporate world where efficiency and productivity and resources need to be taken into consideration, and the least amount of resources, the least amount of things, doing things twice. I think that with this current structure, we have a lot of duplication. We have staff sitting across 3 different committees, and I think the most efficient structure is a flat one, which is the council and 1 set of committees, whatever that is, one level. So I do agree we should go with number 1 or something very similar to number 1, where there's only 1 committee structure reporting into council. And I don't know how we do that yet, even looking at what we've got so far, because I don't know how we make standing committees advisory committees unless we just change the name. But I think the 1 council, 1 committee structure, I think, is the way we need to go. We do need to have lay members and maybe more lay members involved. So that's where I land on this. Efficiency, productivity, costs, all those things need to be taken. And I tell you, we'll make decisions faster. Right now, it takes probably a month to 2 months for some committee to catch up with council. An advisory committee reports into a standing committee, and the standing committee reports into council. That could take up to 2 months for a decision to come to council. So I think the most efficient one of these 3 options is number 1, and that's where I land. We might have to tweak it a bit to ensure we get all of the, like the Public Works and Finance, committee services, and we need to get them in that level as well. So maybe it's just one level of advisory committees reporting into council. That's where I land on this. So I would go with number 1 with some tweaking. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Councillor Sharawa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. So I'm just going to go over some of the things that I think are working well. And first of all, I do appreciate the intent that we did this. We gave people, as much say as we possibly could. We got the public engaged again, which was great. So I think in that way, it's been really beneficial. However, I also acknowledge and appreciate the fact that we've realized that we could improve. Some of the things that I personally found to be a little monotonous was with the standing committees, the committees coming up with a decision and then having council lift the items, and then we would basically just say, we didn't like that decision, so we're going to decide on it again, which, it's a little bit of an insult to the committee. It's a bit of a waste of the time of the council members. So in that way, I'm moving away from this way, and I'll get to my other one. Communication, I think, can be improved again. I like to have the information. When I come into a council meeting, I just want to have as much information as I can. Maybe I'll go into a council meeting and I'll have an opinion about something, but my mind is not set until I've heard everything I need to have. And I find that, with a different alternative structure, we could have a little bit more communication. I know that's been really important to me. And I think this is something will definitely improve my ability to be an effective counselor. So I'm leaning to council only with the advisory committees as well. I think in this way, we still have that input from residents. And I'm not just listening to committee members. It's also the residents that will email me and give me their feedback. That's the stuff that, so if somebody's not on a committee, I'm still listening. They can still call me. They can still email me. I'm still going to take that into consideration as well. So I feel like this is the middle ground, and I'd be supporting that option as well.
Thank you, Councillor Shawa. Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I guess I feel kind of spoiled because I like the status quo. The committees I'm on are fantastic. The standing committees, Public Works, Community Services. I enjoy the lay members. I enjoy their input and their expertise. Staff, their input, their expertise. Again, the conversations that you get to have that you don't typically get to have. And I enjoy sitting at the table with different councillors for these committees. So I agree it could be possibly with some housekeeping a little bit more efficient that can work with best practices, but I really enjoy being part of the committees the way that we have the standing committees, and I enjoy hearing from members of the advisory committees, and I see great things happening from committees because we reestablish them. Age-friendly advisory committees, a great example with the age-friendly symposium that they had, which was a great success. I campaigned on bringing back committees, so I'm in for the status quo.
All right. Yeah, we can open up to round. No, Councillor Davoli hasn't spoken yet. Councillor Davoli.
Thank you. I am going to say that it was a lot to take in, for sure. It was a very comprehensive report, and my experience on our standing committees has really emphasized for me how important I believe they are. I will speak more to finance than the other committees I stand on because the lay members that we were able to attract and to sit on finance are truly, truly gifted individuals in their field, and they bring so much to the table. As counselors, we are not experts in every single field. And in fact, in some cases, we're not experts in any of them. And it has been such a pleasure to work with our lay members on finance who bring examples from other municipalities and other organizations and give examples of how things are done elsewhere to help us consider how we can do things. They are a breath of fresh air many times when they question us and say, why couldn't we do it this way or that? And have been enormously helpful. I think one of the issues with the standing committees is that we probably need to go back and redefine the roles and responsibilities of them. To be very clear on what that is, I will speak to finance again, that of course we took all those roles and responsibilities and re-examined them when the committee was born, and then laid out a work plan as to what we follow and what will be done at each meeting. And that has been truly helpful. In fact, I still get pushback from some of the committee members that they wish there was more that our finance did, that because they feel they have more talents that they could bring to the table to assist us with. My concern with some of the other models being open to us is that when we don't have standing committees and we have only advisory committees reporting up, what we really are having is members of the community who are having more input and more say than even we do as councillors. And I think that that role that we play on those standing committees is a very important role as well. And we were the ones elected. I believe that we need to take responsibility for what we do and the decisions we make. And so I too enjoy hearing from them, but I also believe that the buck stops at our door, and therefore that's the role of the standing committees and so on. I hear my fellow councillors' concerns that sometimes the standing committees have made recommendations that have been overturned by council, and that too has saddened me on many an occasion, because I think the standing committee came to a very good decision and then all of a sudden we veered left. But that is democracy, and sometimes democracy is a bit messy, but it still gets us to where we need to be, and certainly, as the saying goes, is better than the alternatives out there. I would suggest that our advisory committees need to be more focused in what they are trying to do. Not have a wide mandate that they can set. They're advisory committees only. They're not made up of councillors. They're not standing committees. And so I think that their focus needs to be more defined, and so that they can help the standing committee that they then report to. So just to conclude, I do support option number 2, which is the standing committee role, but would like to see a few things tweaked within that yet further.
Councillor Vardy.
Round 2, through you, Mr. Mayor. Respectfully, I disagree with Councillor DeVoldy. I think a rose by any other name smells just as sweet, and whether they're standing committees or they are advisory committees, I think we will achieve the same end. I think that it would be important to have at least one person, or one councillor rather, chairing an advisory committee, who could then bring back clarification or a little more detail on what was discussed at the advisory committee, or about what the recommendations of the advisory committee are on. But to Councillor Costangi's point, this would give councillors, well, you might have like at least one, a minimum of one on a committee. Councillors could choose to be on any number of committees that they wanted to be on where they have an interest. And with the current structure, as Councillor Baraji said, I mean, he had to leave one committee because it reported up through another committee, and I've also talked about how these are cumbersome. So I think we can achieve what Councillor DeVoli is looking for and what Councillor Korstanji is wanting within option one. And a matter of fact, I think it would give councillors far more flexibility to be part of committees that, I mean, it could be part of all of them if they wanted. So it would give people a lot of flexibility to go where they might have a particular interest.
Thank you, Councillor Barty. Councillor Sharwal.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. So I think we've kind of gone over everything. So I think as far as the participation, first of all, with finance, I agree. We had fantastic members, but one thing that was really frustrating was we had these super knowledgeable lay members on our committee, and we really couldn't use them as effectively as we wanted to. We were just, you know, I think the whole time we've had the committee, it was basically, what do we do with these minutes? We're receiving minutes, they don't have information, we can't actually do anything with them, and then the important stuff just would jump over to council anyways. So in that way, it's a lot of like posturing, like, you know, we have this standing committee, but we're actually not using them. So in that way, it could have been done a lot better. With participation, you know, people can still come delegate. They could still voice their opinion as much as possible. And the third thing is that staff also would really like this. And if we really value our staff and their opinions and their recommendations and their, you know, family lives, then that's another reason to support it.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Many of us were asked at the debate nights, the councillor and mayor debate nights, if we were in favor of bringing back standing committees. And I think that question was asked to each of us. I know it was asked to me and all the other people that were running in Ward 4. So if you stood before the public and said that you were in favor of bringing back standing committees, then you have a responsibility to maintain the status quo and give them a shot. Ironically, again, earlier this evening, people voted in favor of requiring an AGM for the DIA to make a change to their governance structure. Where's our AGM? I'd suggest that if we want to make this change, we defer this decision and allow for people to have an opportunity to give feedback to us. If we hear nothing, then maybe it's not that important and we go to option one that everybody's in favor of. But if we hear back from a lot of members of the public that say, I think the standing committees are important, then we have responsibility to listen to them. And we've really done nothing to ask the public about their opinion on standing committees. We're being asked, so I agree with Councillor Howe that we should at the very least defer this decision for a month or two to give people a chance to give us feedback on how they feel about this. Those are my 2 cents. Thanks, Your Worship.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor Serio. One thing that should we go with option one, all the members that would be shuffled around would remain still here, so we wouldn't be losing out on insight from any public members. But I completely agree with the point that if you stood up in front of the public in an election and promised standing committees, that you should live by that. And I did too. I said standing committees at the election, but the one thing I was to say, from the outside looking in, it wasn't as clear. And to be honest, back then I didn't even know that a third option, such as council only, existed. And as I said earlier, I do think it is the best of both worlds. But I think we really have to go back to what Councillor Charlois said and focus on staff. The amount of bottlenecks and added staff time in the facilitation of all these meetings is just adding to government, adding to bureaucracy at a time when cutting red tape and cutting bureaucracy is bipartisan. I think it also is incumbent upon us to make decisions as we go. We can't wait 4 years to make a substantial decision like that for another election. I think we can that would be a static approach. I think we could be a little bit more dynamic to this and evolve as we go and make changes year to year. Thank you.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Whether, I hear Councillor DeFlavio's points, but whether it's called a standing committee or an advisory committee doesn't really matter. The point is, we will have the same, basically same process in place, except we're going to be making decisions faster. So right now, it could take 2 months to make a decision. So if we can make it a decision within a month, that's 12 decisions we can make in a year rather than 6. But it may be called something else, maybe it's called a standing advisory committee, whatever we call it, doesn't matter. It's the same structure. We have lay members, and we should have our lay members, and they add a lot of value to it. We still will have our councillors on those committees, and we still have our staff on those committees. So we have the same mixture of people and professionals on the committees. We're just cutting out a level of governance. And I think that in this world where things are moving so fast, there's so many things we're trying to do on a monthly, weekly basis. If we can find some efficient way of doing that better, faster, more effectively, more costly, less costly, and with less resources, I think that's the model we need to go to. And when I look at the 3 different ones we have on the table here, number 1 is that model. So as I said, it may need some tweaking. Maybe more councillors need to go across some of the advisory committees or standing committees, whatever we want to call them. But I really believe we need to take a level of the decision-making out of the process. And I think that we will get more done, and I think we'll get more done faster. So that's why I think that, number 1 is where we need to go. Nobody misses out. Nobody gets left out of the process. Everyone is still in there. All the folks that are currently on standing committees who are lay members, maybe we can just disperse them across some of the other committees, the new committee structure. Councillors, the same thing. And, we won't have our clerks attending 13 meetings or whatever it is they attend every month. Maybe they only attend 6 or 7. That's got to be a cost-effective process and a more efficient process. And I think that number 1 on this list is the one that gives us that. So I still say we should go with number 1 with maybe some slight tweaks, and maybe we can send the clerk back to make those tweaks and come up with something that fits that whole process and fits all the levels into one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kristanji.
Thank you, through Chair. So just a question, if we change the structure, are we changing the times of all the committees? Because there's a large portion of the committees that are during the day, and we're saying, well, our members can just go on other committees, but if they work, they're not going to be able to do that. And the same as council. So if we change the structure, are we starting from the very beginning again and reappointing members to committees and then reappointing times for committees?
Through the chair, the intention would not be to reset the times. We would evaluate which members of lay members of the standing committees wish to go to other committees, evaluate, make sure that there isn't an imbalance. They would have that information ahead. So if they weren't available on a Tuesday night, then they probably shouldn't join the one that's on Tuesday night. But we would, I think, given that we're midway through the year or the term, I think it's more efficient to handle it that way versus starting at the beginning.
Okay, I'm just concerned that as a counselor who works full-time, that's going to limit it. There will be committees that I just won't be able to be on, so I'll be limited on what committees that I can actually go on.
Councillor Howe.
I'm going to repeat myself. I guess that's, I thought about asking, to defer, but I think we've already had the discussion, so it's probably that is out the gate. But I really think we've had 8 different thoughts. There are a couple that are one and the same, but we're all trying to figure this out on the fly. I'm not bright enough. I'd make a motion right now to take this and put it over until the 19th. What's the next council meeting? 21st? okay, you know, to the next, and then we deal with it, but we can then get our head around it all. I haven't had the ability to do it. I want to be able to do it right, because it hasn't worked like it should, and we've got a chance to fix it. So I would like to see this move it over for 2 weeks, and then we go at it, and there's our decision.
I'd second it.
All right, so we have a deferral motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Howe, seconded by Councillor Sharwa. You can vote in favor to defer or not on e-scribe.
Oops, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Right now, we're voting for the deferral, right? Okay. Wait a minute, which one did I just go on? Okay, so we're taking the whole. I didn't see that, come on. Refresh?
All right, so the deferral's carried.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was 6-3.
Yeah. The next discussion report pertains to comments on Bill 185 and proposed provincial planning statement. Can I have a mover and seconder to get it on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Davoli. Terry, please go ahead.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about this report. On April 10th, the province dropped a whole bunch of legislation. So Bill 185, which is called, it's an omnibus bill called Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes. It involved the changing of 15 different acts. Key among them is the Planning Act, the Development Charges Act, and there's a few other ones. There's also a series of ERO postings, so Environmental Registry Ontario postings, and there was also a second revision to the provincial planning statement, which is the guiding policy document that guides planning decisions in Ontario. So there's a number of comments that we have in this report, and we've tried to simplify it, and believe me, it was lots of pages of material, so simplifying it is difficult. But there's a number of positive changes, I think, with the Development Charges Act, that they allow studies as capital costs again. That was a change from Bill 23. They removed some of the phasing in for some of the bylaws if they created the bylaws after 2022, which doesn't affect us, but it's still a positive change. So they made some changes there, and also some rate freeze timelines that don't quite impact us because we haven't changed our bylaw, but they would impact the region because they had changed their bylaw. So there's some positive changes that they did for the Development Charges Act. Under the Planning Act, they did talk about removal of refund of planning fees if we exceeded those timelines. So that is a definite positive thing for municipalities across Ontario. And they also talked about allowance of lapsing of site plans and subdivisions. So if they extend past a certain period of time, and there'd be regulations to talk about that, that we could say that they would lapse. And so if there's an allocation of water or sewer capacity for them, they would no longer, we could pull that allocation away from them. So there's some positives there that they won't stand on the books for 20 years, and you have these subdivisions out there that are just sitting there and taking up space and not really reflecting current requirements. There's a couple elements that we are going to be watching for going forward. In the Planning Act, it used to talk about allocations and reallocations for servicing capacity that municipalities could allocate for developments. They moved that to the Municipal Act. We're not quite sure why they were moving that, but it is definitely something we will be watching going forward. There's supposed to be regulations set up for that. And they've also allocated in the Municipal Act, allowing incentives for municipalities to provide businesses that have a provincial interest very specifically to provide some incentives for them. So we're not sure if Grimsby would be impacted by that, but again, it's something to watch. And there's also a number of Planning Act reporting requirements that really impact those large and growing municipalities. So those 29 list of ones, I think I've talked to you about them before, but we're not one of them. St. Catharines and Niagara Falls are in the Niagara region, but we're not one of them. But it's still important to know that what we could have to report on in the future. There's a number of other ones that also have a significant impact on us potentially, and they just haven't quite provided some information. So a key one is they have said in Bill 23 that they were going to remove planning responsibilities from the region. At this time, they did note that 3 of them, so Peel, I believe, Halton and York, no, Halton and York, I believe, are going to start on July 1st. They have not actually given a date for Niagara. So that is something we still have to watch. As part of the environmental registry posting, they did say that it should be done by the end of 2024, but because that affects our official plan with respect to who approves it, it impacts how some of our development review processes, it impacts a number of our policies and processes. It's good to know what's happening, because how do you plan without knowing what the rules are in place? So we definitely need a date for that. With regard to the the planned major transit station areas, they have talked about removal of surface parking in them, and that would supersede our official plans and zoning bylaws. So regardless of what we have in our secondary plans, that would supersede that. But it doesn't have any consideration of context. So what happens in Toronto might be very different from what happens in Grimsby, where we know our major transit station area, it would be a feeder for a lot of things. So there might be a need for different parking. And there's also, so we're really asking for some best practices and guidelines from the province rather than having this legislation go as it is. With respect to pre-consultations and complete application review, pre-consultations are generally a planning practice where we asked potential applicants to come in prior to, it's a requirement for many applications to come in prior to when they apply to talk about what kind of studies they're going to need. Let's look at the proposal to see if there's any tweaks or changes or anything like that that we can make to it, and provide some input to them, but also give them the list of requirements that we have. They are going to take that as a removal of a requirement to make that a suggestion, which could lead to us getting applications without any forewarning, and we just get studies, but we're not even sure if they meet the requirements. So that could actually take longer to process applications because they might just not meet basic requirements. Also, they're going to remove, we typically have a 30-day review period for when we get an application to deem it complete, to say you've done all the studies required and they meet our ability to review them. They're going to remove that as well. And they're going to allow developers to be able to appeal at any time. Those things can actually lead to some problems for us, which it's not going to speed up development applications. It's not going to speed up review. It's not going to help people understand and see things, because we might have a mismatch of studies provided to us, and it's not really an easy process and a methodical process to lead us to a timely decision on these applications. They, as part of the draft provincial planning statement, they've talked about urban area boundaries, and there is an opportunity for people to just apply for urban area boundary expansions, as long as it's not in the Greenbelt, which affects us a small bit. Most of Grimsby is in the Greenbelt, but there are a small bit of lands, mostly to the north and west in the town that could have that. So we're asked, but there's no requirements, and there's no parameters. There's not much information. So we're really asking for them to have, if we approve our official plan, you don't want to have somebody come in day one and say, I want an urban boundary expansion. That it doesn't quite make sense. So we're looking for a bit of a 2-year moratorium, which is generally how they've done this in the past. If you have an approved official plan, they give some time, so then you can like further get your zoning bylaw done and everything like that, and then also provide some planning and guidance for that. And then they have a lot of information about additional residential units. So this is the second and third unit that is allowed in our singles or semi-detached and our row housing that is part of Bill 23 that came forward. And the province is looking to develop regulations that would supersede our zoning bylaw and official plan for all of those, and also remove all Planning Act approvals for them. So our concern is that it really doesn't consider local context. It doesn't consider heritage, natural features. We're going to have to deal with some neighborhood complaints and things like that. So instead of having those blanket regulations, we're really looking for best practices and allowing municipalities to work with applicants to make better decisions. It's not that we're saying we don't want density. It's not that we're saying we want to stop these things, but we want to make sure it fits the context of our communities and really enhances our neighborhoods, not just adds density without consideration. Another change is that they're looking for community facilities. So that is our schools, our hospitals, our long-term care homes, and all of those bigger facilities do not have any site plans or any minor variances or anything like that. So they can do whatever they want in our municipalities without considering some of our grading ingress, egress opportunities. So we don't have that opportunity, again, to provide input and work with them, which is especially odd because another part of the provincial planning statement talks about the opportunity for municipalities to work with these facilities to co-locate facilities or share resources. So I'm not sure how you have no planning application but still allow for no planning applications. So we're looking for that decision to be reversed. Another one positive thing is that they, especially those municipalities that have no municipal newspaper that they can advertise in, that they are allowing them to just post notices on their website, which is a good thing because sometimes they had to go to far away newspapers to just meet the requirements. This would apply to a couple of the acts. We're asking that it apply to all of the acts, including the Heritage Act, because it is a huge expense for all of us. But allowing us all municipalities to post on our websites as part of that, even if we have newspapers, but have the ability to work with newspapers to post and then direct traffic to our website. So we have the best of both worlds, but are also saving on costs and not just requiring municipalities that have a newspaper to continue to spend on these things without some opportunity to interject. And then the biggest other one is agricultural lands with respect to the additional residential units and severances. So they're still allowing for additional residential units on agricultural lands. And there is some potential for severances. Some of the policies are just not easily worded so you can fully understand them and appreciate them. So we're looking for more consistency and clarity around those because once you lose agricultural land, it's gone. And that is going to feed all of us in Ontario that we're looking for. We're having more population, so we need more agricultural land to feed and sustain us. So fragmenting that land is going to be particularly challenging. So that's just a high-level summary of some of the key things that we saw in the changes. And so all the comments are due to the province on May 10th. So hence we've had to very quickly bring this forward to you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Terry, given the amount of information that was downloaded from the province. It makes it very difficult for planning staff and councils to make a totally informed decision when we're up against a May 10th deadline. Councillor De Flavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Terry. There are a lot of concerns. I don't know. I don't want to speak on behalf of all the council, but we get this feeling of kind of futility and helplessness when it comes to these decisions that are made from the top down. I understand that the province has control over what we do as a municipality, and I respect, that they have that right and that power, but without making decisions that don't truly consider input from the municipalities is problematic, to say the least. So I guess my question for you is there something that we can do as a council? I mean, other than you giving comments back as staff, can we as council pass a resolution that supports your comments? Can we put it in another form that summarizes our feelings, and your feelings and our feelings, I believe, would echo those, about the concerns that we have about the decision-making process, the changes to the process, all of the things that you mentioned. There are so many that I don't want to go through all the details, but is there something that we can do? Would you be comfortable in drafting a resolution that we can then approve as a council to support what you're saying tonight?
Councillor De Flavio, sorry for interrupting, but I think the resolution that we have on the floor encompasses that. Don't you feel, Terry?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's one of the recommendations, is to provide these to the province as our suggestions for changes to them. I don't think there's anything stopping councillors from saying, we really need this, and that part being part of the cover letter to say, making these changes impacts us dramatically. And every time you make these changes, especially when we have to consider them, figure them out, figure out how to adapt to them, and really consider how it works in our context, we can always add that to the letter. But that's exactly what we've positioned this as, is you being able to review them and say that, yes, we would support them, because it doesn't help if it's just staff comments. It helps if it's council directive.
Sorry for my misunderstanding, Your Worship. I meant just emphasizing council's approval and support for the resolution. Thank you.
Great. Seeing no further question or comments. Oh, sorry. Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. My question to Terry, when they introduced this legislation, did they also release all the regulations and so on that typically accompany legislation, or did they not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's what some of the EROs, or the environmental registry postings, are, is they have some questions based on they're going to develop regulations. So we don't know them yet. And that's part of the challenge. It's one thing to say, it could be great, it could be really bad. We just don't know right now. And that's part of the concern, is that I'm not sure how a regulation that fits Toronto will really fit Grimsby or fit Wainfleet or any, there's a whole spectrum of communities in this province. And to have a one blanket regulation, it's hard to see how that could really help us all.
But nevertheless, some regulations haven't been released, but not all.
They really have questions about what would you want to see in the regulations, but we have no idea what the drafting of those look like.
I'm just going to add to that there has been a transition over the years, and I will say over the decades, because I'm an old timer and go back that far now. At one time, we used to have governments, both at the federal and provincial level, that would introduce a budget or legislations, and they would do so once a year, not piecemeal. They would come up with the legislation and the regulations. The effective date might be in the future, might be effective immediately or whatever, but we would see the whole picture at once. And then they got away from that. They started doing it piecemeal throughout the year. And then they started doing it without the regulations. And worse yet, they even got to a point where they started doing it by press releases, just to make life really complicated. And this is just another example of what I will say is not a well-thought-out process, that they give part of it, but not all of it. Then they ask for opinions, but of course they haven't given us everything they are going to be doing, and we end up with this piecemeal process, which is truly not effective and adds to the red tape and bureaucracy in our lives.
Yeah, I'd second that. Any further questions from council? I'm quite happy that if we can prepare a cover letter that just says that council is backing planning and that we do feel frustrated with the way it is being rolled out. I think consensus around the horseshoe here is that it's a very difficult way to do things for municipalities, and making decisions on something we don't know about is very unsettling. So I have the resolution, moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Devoli. Resolved that report PA 2410, comments on Bill 185 and proposed provincial planning statement and regulation changes dated May 6, 2024 be received, and that council approve the recommendations and suggestions for the province, and that the report be sent to the province as the town of Grimsby's comments on the proposed changes. All in favor?
Ask for an amendment?
Sure.
May I suggest that we're not the only municipality grappling with this, and it may be good to also CC our reply to AMO?
Yeah, I think that can be accommodated quite easily. So I read the resolution, and it's a friendly amendment. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have notice of motions. Notice of motion from Councillor Charwa on a long-term care home. Councillor Charwa, please read your motion.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. Okay, so whereas the town of Grimsby 2022 to 2026 identified a high quality of life, specifically improving the health and safety of residents as strategic priorities, and whereas the town of Grimsby currently has 3 licensed long-term care homes providing 134 licensed beds for community members in need of long-term care, and whereas Ontario Health on March 4th, 2024 reported a shortfall of 430 waitlisted for a long-term care home in Grimsby, and whereas the town of Grimsby is experiencing significant population growth, which will continue to strain the resources of the healthcare system, including Killian Lodge, Deer Park Villa, Shalom Manor, and West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, and whereas the deficit in licensed care beds will continue to increase as in proportion to population growth, and whereas the province of Ontario has responded to the needs of the community with the rebuilds of the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, and whereas the province of Ontario can continue to show great care for our community with the construction of a new long-term care home, and whereas there may be potential to acquire property in Grimsby that offers an ideal location for the addition of a long-term care home, therefore be it resolved that the town of Grimsby communicate its desire to investigate partnership opportunities with the province of Ontario to take possession of property in Grimsby with the intention to construct a new long-term care home at the location. Be it further resolved that this notice of motion be circulated to Sam Oosterhoff, Niagara West MPP, Niagara Region Public Health, the Honourable Sylvia Jones, Minister of Health and Deputy Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Raymond Sung Jun Chow, Minister for Seniors and Accessibility, and the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the May 21, 2024 council meeting.
Next is a notice of motion from Councillor Korsanji on amending the Code of Conduct.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Amending the Code of Conduct. Whereas municipal council and committee meetings are analogous to workplace for elected officials and staff, subject to the same expectations of professional conduct as any other workplace, and whereas inappropriate behavior in these environments may give rise to formal code of conduct complaints, and whereas these formal complaints may be determined by the Integrity Commissioner to be a contravention of the Code of Conduct, and whereas the Code of Conduct and the Municipal Act only provide penalties, that being a reprimand or suspension of remuneration for contraventions, and whereas remedial measures are not provided by the Code of Conduct and may represent a more appropriate course of action to address certain contraventions, and whereas numerous municipalities include remedial measures within their codes of conduct as a best practice to overcome conduct or performance deficiencies, therefore be it resolved that staff, in consultation with the Integrity Commissioner, draft an amendment to appropriate sections of the Code of Conduct to implement remedial measures as an alternative solution option for contraventions, and that the draft update to the Code of Conduct bylaw 20-74 be brought forth to Council no later than the end of Q2 2024. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the May 21st, 2024 Council meeting. Thank you.
Up next, we have correspondence. Given the discussion tonight, I'm not sure if anyone wants to lift the town of Pelham. Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'd like to lift the town of Pelham and request endorsement.
All right, so we have Councillor Korstanji as the mover to endorse that. We need a seconder. Councillor Sharwa. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Sharwa. Resolved that Council endorse the Town of Pelham's resolution regarding Bill 165 and the decision of the Ontario Energy Board to end the gas pipeline study. Study? All right.
We'll vote on e-scribe.
All right. Yeah, you can vote on e-scribe. And that's defeated. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the correspondence? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradzi. Moved by Councillor... Yeah. All right. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradzi.
Sorry, can I lift an item? Sorry. Is it?
Sure.
I'd like to lift item 18.2, bylaw to amend 2020.
No, you can't. We're not in bylaws.
Oh, sorry.
Receiving the correspondence.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. I'm going to lift that later.
Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradzi. Resolved that the following correspondence be received. Town of Pelham Bill 165 and decision of Ontario Energy Board to end gas pipeline study. Niagara Region Waste Management Strategic Plan. Town of Wayne's Fleet Public Libraries and other older adults. All in favor?
Actually, point of clarification. Can we remove the town of Pelham that we defeated
We're just
it?
receiving it. We didn't endorse it. That failed, so
Wouldn't
we're
it
just
come out?
receiving it.
Okay. And then, sorry, second question. Are you going to read out the Museum Month proclamation?
That's
After, sorry. Okay.
All right, all in favor? And that's carried. Up next, we have a proclamation for Childhood Apraxia of Speech Day. Need a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake. Whereas May 14th, 2024 marks Childhood Apraxia of Speech Day, during which awareness will be raised throughout Grimsby, Ontario, about childhood apraxia of speech, an extremely challenging speech disorder that affects 1 in 1,000 children, and whereas childhood apraxia of speech, CAS, causes children to have significant difficulty learning to speak, and it is among the most severe speech deficits in children, and whereas the act of learning to speak comes effortlessly to most children, those with apraxia require early, appropriate, and intensive speech therapy, often for many years, to learn how to speak. And whereas without appropriate speech therapy intervention, children with apraxia will have diminished communication skills, but are also placed at high risk for secondary impacts in reading, writing, spelling, and other school-related skills. And whereas such primary and secondary impacts diminish future independence and employment opportunities and challenge the ability to become productive, contributing citizens if not resolved or improved. And whereas public awareness about CAS in Grimsby is essential for families of children with this neurological disorder and the professionals who support them to achieve the needed services for those learning to use their own voice. And whereas our highest respect goes to these children as well as their families for their effort, determination, and resilience in the face of such obstacles. Therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Jeff Jordan, do hereby proclaim May 14th, 2024 as Apraxia Awareness Day. Citizens of Grimsby and surrounding areas are encouraged to work within their communities to increase awareness and understanding of childhood apraxia of speech. All in favor? That's carried. Next proclamation is for Museum Month. Do we have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Davoli. Whereas the 700-plus museums, art galleries, and heritage sites, and the over 8,000 museum workers and 16,000 volunteers contribute to Ontario's $26 billion cultural sector, and whereas museums as trusted local organizations create healthy and connected communities, and by ensuring all Ontarians have access to culture and heritage, inspiring lifelong learning, and whereas museums promote growth and build local economies by welcoming tourists in every community across the province, and whereas this month provides an opportunity to raise awareness for the vital role museums, museum workers, and volunteers have in their communities and celebrate their contributions to community well-being, tourism, education, and learning, and whereas May 18th, 2024 is International Museum Day to highlight museums as centers of education, innovation, and cultural understanding in our communities, therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Jeff Jordan, do hereby proclaim May 2024 as Museum Month in Grimsby and encourage all residents and tourists to visit our local museums in May. All in favor? That's carried. All right, can I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws? Moved by Council. All right, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to lift 18.2, bylaw for recreation facility rentals.
Let's get a mover and seconder to approve the rest of the bylaws first. Councillor Frake, Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Frake, seconded by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 2434. Which one isn't it?
It's the 35.
All right, 2434 to
36, 37, 38.
yeah, to 24, 36, 37, and 38 inclusive, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. All right, so it's bylaw 35.
Yep.
All right, go ahead, Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. So I just wanted to have a discussion about one little detail that I'm hoping we can amend. As you know, the Peach King Center is going to cost us a lot of money, and we need to recoup some money. And I've been really thinking about the costs of the hockey rentals. And one area that we're still quite low compared to Hamilton. And I'm talking about like the public facilities, not private. But one that we are significantly under charging is for tournaments, tryouts, and hockey schools. Right now, I think it's basically it's half the price, if not less than what Hamilton would charge.
I don't know if we have Sarah Sweeney here because I think the bylaw was specifically about pickleball, wasn't it? Not all the fees.
No. Sorry, this is on the facility rentals. This is the schedule.
Through the mayor, so the schedule of fees is already approved. The only change that you're approving this evening is the addition of the pickleball fee, which is related to that report in community services. Just in follow-up to that, though, as well, we are undertaking our user fee study very soon, so we are going to be thoroughly reviewing all of our rates. But this specific bylaw is just amending the existing bylaw to add the pickleball fee. All the other rates have already been approved and communicated.
Can I? So there will be a time to discuss like those three specific. I don't want to miss this, Sarah. I've talked about this before. So I just want to have a chat with about that.
So through the chair, so the best time to have that chat will be when we do that comprehensive review. That's work we're starting to get underway. So that's coming your way very shortly. So if you can just hold on a little bit longer, we can cover all of that at that time. And we'll be looking at all of the rates that are within community services.
All right, because that one was lifted, we need a mover and seconder to approve that bylaw. I'll have Councillor Charwa as the mover since she lifted it. I need a seconder. Councillor Bradsey. Moved by Councillor Charwa, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that bylaw 24-35 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Sorry, thank you. Next meeting of council is scheduled for May 21st, 2024 at 6:30 p.m., and that's a Tuesday. Can I have a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 24-39 and that same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good evening, everyone. Good night.